Okay, now being 6:30, I'll call the Sterling Planning Board meeting to order, February 22nd, 2024. All right, we've got a lot to do tonight, so let's get right to it. First thing on our agenda, we have an A&R plan for David Fideli, one new building lot on South Nelson Road, map 62, lot 1. We have Jack Maloney here.
Can I come up?
Yeah, now, why don't you come on up? Tell us what you got.
I have a colored plan, which is a little bit easier to look at than the... So originally this was cut off by Doug Andreisek, a parcel that was over here. So what we've done is added to the gray parcel. Mr. Fideli is going to be downsizing and building a new house over here. We created two parcels. This parcel A is going to go with the existing house which he currently lives in. And then parcel B out back, he's going to reserve that. It's a non-buildable lot to either sell to the new owners here, the existing owners here, or attach it to this parcel sometime down in the future. Nobody, if these two guys don't want it, so basically that's.
So you're saying this is going to end up going with this?
Yep.
Why did they just incorporate it in right from the start?
From this, what do you mean?
To just include it with this and the A and I just have this?
To dissolve this lot line here.
Right.
Yeah, so this will be the new lot line out here, which will incorporate the homemade fish pond.
Okay.
Quarter pond.
All right. Okay. So the only thing in reviewing this that I found minor, but nevertheless, up here we'll be looking for the map and parcel number.
Okay.
Okay, and the owner of record.
Okay, that's not on the plan already?
No. That's one that we have anyways.
Well, this is owned by the Fidelis. Both parcels are owned by the Fidelis. So that is not going to change until this changes ownership. But they own this right now.
Okay. Well, can you get that on there?
Yep.
The map and the parcel?
Yep.
And then there's a typo on Sterling, Mass. We could fix that. On the bottom left. And then I don't see the box for rural residential without the setbacks. Right here it says Sterling. And then the box for rural residential showing the setbacks requirements. So we can go ahead and approve it for you tonight, but you'll have to bring right, subject to corrections.
Bring your Mylar.
Yeah, bring your Mylar in to Patty
Building department.
Yep.
in the building department, and then she'll sign it for you. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
Okay. So that being said, I'll welcome a motion that we approve the A&R plan for David Fideli, 52 South Nelson Road. With the corrections, and he'll be bringing it next week. Have a second? Second. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? Ayes have it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, Jack.
Yep. Thank you.
There he goes. Keep smiling.
All right. Next, continued, this meeting is, public hearing is still open. The continued public meeting to review the site plan for 3,600 square foot accessory building and wash plant for the earth removal operation at 17 Stonecrest Way. Map 71-1, Grand Onyx. So, it's for the board.
Sir, before you start, Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this matter as it started before I was elected to the board.
Okay. That's fine. You can stay sitting there if you want. I'll sit. Okay. Just to refresh everybody's memory a little bit, we've had quite a few plans on this in the past, and the applicant has brought in a different engineer who's created another plan. So it's like starting over. It's almost not, but it almost is. There's some significant changes on this plan. So I'd like it just to review it as we look at this and we see the presentation, as we are pretty much starting over again as to what they're presenting here tonight. So I have, how do you pronounce your last name?
Frank McPartland.
Fartland. So he's going to do the presentation. And with that,
Thank
Go
you
ahead.
very much.
See what you
My
got.
name is Frank McPartland from Dillis and Roy, here on behalf of the applicant, Onyx Corporation. As the chairman said, the applicant has proposed to construct a maintenance building with parking as an accessory to the current use of the property. This is what has triggered the site plan review for this project. The accessory building, the location is unchanged since the previous iterations of the application. It's going to be 3,600 square feet. So it's, the site plan review is triggered for the construction of more than 1,200 square feet for an industrial purpose, as well as for the expansion of the parking. We're adding, let's see, it's 10 parking spaces around that facility. There is no change in use on the property. It is, all work is accessory to the current gravel and quarrying use that is covered by the active earth removal permit that they have on site. The maintenance building itself is proposed in support of a wash plant operation, which processes crushed granite from the site into various materials, including Title V sand. So the wash plant itself is in this area. The way I'm going to walk through how the wash plant works, and then talk about groundwater protection district, and then some other high points from the review letter they worked out with the town of Sterling's peer review. The wash plant itself, so crushed granite is conveyed via the existing conveyor system that's already on site and in use. It's conveyed via a new conveyor belt across the site to the wash plant. And the wash plant itself consists of a horizontal wash screen that sorts the material to either several different conveyors or to what's called the agri-dry dewatering washers. There's a single screw one and a double screw one. Those are basically, so walk through this. And these diagrams were provided to the town. Basically, the existing equipment conveys the crushed material to this essentially a giant sifter. Wash deck, yes. Yep.
Just this typical screener that has a washing capability with sprinklers on it, so.
Yep. So this horizontal wash screen sorts the material either to two conveyors, or one of three conveyors, which sort out 3/8 inch, 1/2 inch, or 7/8 inch material, or it sifts the material into one of the two agri-dry screws, one of which will sort the material into a Title V sand.
And the other is a concrete sand.
The other is going to be concrete sand? Okay. And so a slurry, which is a mix of water and flocculant, is pumped into this horizontal screening system from an AltaFlow pumping unit, which is located at the main maintenance building right next to it. It's kind of a tall, like a silo, essentially. The agri-dry screw units, as you can see, they're sloped up So the material comes in the bottom, and the screws lift it up, and as that happens, water is basically runs out of the material. That is collected into a series of either underground tanks, or into a, and then downstream of the tanks, there's a larger processed water basin, clay lined. These also recirculate the water back through the system, so it's almost a closed system. I think based on based on the information provided, they need about 1,800 gallons a minute pumped into the the horizontal sifter. 1,667 gallons a minute of that is recirculated. So it's essentially got a 92% water reuse level.
Right there, Frank?
Yes, sir.
Can you show us on your plan right there, where's your thickening tank?
Thickening tank. On this plan or on the?
Not on that.
It's not on this plan?
Okay.
Oh.
So you're showing us right off the conveyor right now is what you're showing us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so the thickening tank is located back at the maintenance building. So that'll have a force main that pumps to the horizontal screen.
Yep, you get it pretty close, yeah.
Pretty close.
Yep.
Yeah, so the water's collected and recirculated to the screen at a rate of approximately 92%. The remaining 8% would be makeup water that is drawn from the storage tanks and the processed water basin. So the flocculant that is used in this process is manufactured by Phoenix, brand name of EA3117. This product is of standard use in water treatment processes. The MSDS sheet has no recommended restrictions on use. The substance contains no components considered to be persistent or bioaccumulative and toxic, and the material is not classified as dangerous for the environment. It's completely miscible in water, which means once it's in the water, until the water evaporates away, it stays in it, which is why we have the clay-lined basin. The hazard classification for the material, it's an eye irritant and a slip and fall risk. You don't want to splash it in your eyes, you don't want to spill it and then step in it.
Does your thickening tank reduce the need for using thickening agents?
Yes, it doesn't actually need flocculant.
Or possibly eliminate?
Yeah, the intention is that it will not use flocculants as needed, and it's an on-demand system that's automated with an eye. It has a photo eye that's checking every 3 minutes treatment of the water to see how much silt is in it. It's naturally separating silt and water just in its trajectory and design. The intention of it is to inject the water that comes out the bottom of the screening plant that's washing the material, pump that water that's full of silt back to the thickener at the top. It goes through a number of cones, settles out, naturally pushes the heavy material to the edge. The clean water comes down from the bottom, and they have uprising water to push the clean water up and out to be recycled and used. What it sees is during the turbulence process, and as you're mining and some material has more silt in it, it may take more water that we don't have enough area to treat, and the way to accelerate that settlement is to introduce minute amounts of flocculant into the tank to allow it to settle a little bit quicker. So it's not running all the time with flocculant either. It's an on-demand system.
And the water that's heading up to the top of the tank goes where? Down into your cisterns?
The water that's, so the clean water that's uprising goes back to the system to be reused to wash more product. The only thing that goes into the cistern is that's the clean water that's coming from our proposed well, as well as any water we can catch off the asphalt areas to try to, from a rain event. And then over the evening, while the piles are sitting there and nobody's working, they're wet and there's water bleeding out of them. And it lands on the asphalt that's under those piles, goes to a drainage system and recharges those tanks. So we can reuse that water during our 8-hour operation the next day.
Yeah.
Trying to utilize as much as we can.
Yep, and that's a good jumping off.
The makeup water that he's speaking to, the water that we're losing is not from it going in the ground, it's from leaving in the final product, because the material never gets fully dry without being exposed to air. So we dig in the pile, even though it's leached out, it still has a moisture content, and that's what basically the makeup water is for, is because it's being hauled away in the final product. It never is totally dry, so. Yep.
So, what this, overall proposed condition sheet shows in two colors here is this big purple area is the wash plant. It's the wash plant and stockpiles, yes. This purple rectangular shape is the processed water basin. So, all the water that falls on the wash plant and stockpile area will be collected by a series of catch basins directed to the underground storage tanks, and the underground storage tanks have an overflow that discharges to the processed water basin, which is clay lined. The processed water basin above the clay liner has an underdrain that is piped back to the tanks. So it's essentially a closed system. The processed water basin itself is sized so that if we have a 100-year storm event of 8.28 inches over a 24-hour period, which is the Northeast Regional Climate Center extreme precipitation amount, up to and including the 100-year storm event that falls on this area, this basin can contain it and not overtop.
And on top of that, if there was a situation where that was overtopped, our system has a 100 horsepower pump that's going to eject the water with a float system automatically up and out of the protection zone to the upper part of the floor of the quarry. If you want to show them where that is.
So that, I believe, would be up to this area.
Discharge up to there to de-water it if we were in an event and nobody's on staff, and for some reason there was a 12-inch event, we have that provision as well, so the area doesn't flood.
Back-to-back storms and like that.
So the area won't flood out either.
I didn't read it. What's the capacity of those underflows?
So the tanks are three 50,000 gallon tanks, so there's 150,000 gallons. And then the basin at the 100-year water storage elevation, it's about 800,000 gallons. So there's basically 950,000 gallons of storage. Now, they anticipate using 70,000 gallons a day of water. So we have an order of magnitude more storage than the process.
Is it a well for the 150,000 gallons, well-driven, or is it, or we refill it with the town water?
This will be, the makeup water will be an on-site well. No town water will be used for the wash plant process. None. The only thing that the town water will be used is to service the new maintenance building.
Toilets and
Yeah, yeah. Laboratory services and maybe some truck washing.
Yep.
Nothing, no significant large demand. The orange that you see, this area, both sides of the wash plant, along the edge of the property line and up here, and this is stormwater. So this basin is a stormwater recharge basin. It handles essentially all of the rest of the site. We modeled the stormwater dynamically, which means that all of these sediment basins in this area, excluding this basin because it's hydrologically disconnected, they're dynamically modeled so that as they fill up, they can cross flow back and forth. There are pipes connecting them, so those are also sized to contain the 100-year stormwater event. In a 100-year stormwater event, no stormwater from the developed part of the site leaves the site. It all gets to this basin and is recharged. Something around in my notes, unfortunately for myself, but so as far If there's, are there any other questions about process at this time, or?
No, I think it leads us to the questions of, which were addressed in this letter here that we got the other day. I wonder if you could read this for us.
Yes.
So there's been concerns on a portion of this clipping into the Sterling groundwater area. So if you could just read that, I think it addresses it on this, if you have the same one I have.
I have my copy with my notes.
Okay, good.
So the first half of the memo was wash plant, which, would you like me to read the whole memo, or?
Please.
Oh, certainly. So this is a memo dated February 20th, 2024, from Dillis and Roy, from myself to Stephen Wallace, town planner, titled Wash Plant and Groundwater Protection District. The applicant proposes the construction of a gravel wash plant at 17 Stonecrest Way in the town of Sterling. The gravel wash plant will function as follows. Material from the site will be taken to an existing conveyor which transports the material to the wash plant. The wash plant, using a series of screw conveyors and screens, sorts the material into the desired gradations. This sorting is facilitated with the addition of process water pumped to the wash plant. This process water will sometimes have flocculant, I added that, added to it as a needed basis to ensure consistent product. The safety data sheet for the flocculant, EA 3117, does not list any recommended restrictions on use. The only hazards listed are as an eye irritant, and EA 3117 is non-reactive with no toxicities and is fully miscible, which means mixable with water, homogeneously mixable. The sorted materials are then stockpiled adjacent to the wash plant. These stockpiles are hydrologically disconnected from the stormwater systems serving the remainder of the site. Process water draining from the stockpiles will be collected and stored in a series of underground storage tanks. The underground storage tanks have an overflow outlet to an at-grade clay-lined storage basin, which is this basin here. The at-grade clay-lined storage basin is equipped with an underdrain that drains back into the storage tanks. There is no discharge of process water within the groundwater protection district. Groundwater protection district. Portion of the southern wash plant stockpile and the majority of the process water basin are located within the town of Sterling groundwater protection district, which I have illustrated on this exhibit as this heavy blue line that was taken from the town of Sterling map, which I can put up if there are any questions about that. The wash plant and its process water basin are not a prohibited use in the groundwater protection district as listed in table 4.66. Items 4.661 through 4.667, 4.669 through 4.6613, and 4.6615 are obviously not applicable to the site. Item 4.668 states that discharge to the groundwater of non-sanitary wastewater, including industrial and commercial process wastewater, is prohibited. The proposed design does not create a discharge to groundwater of process wastewater. Process water is collected in the stockpile area and stored for reuse in either the underground storage tanks or the clay-lined process water basin. Item 4.6.614 states that a special permit is required for the removal of soil, loam, sand, gravel, or any other mineral substances within 6 feet of the historical high groundwater table elevation. Based on test pit data submitted to the town of Sterling, no material is removed within 6 feet of the historical high groundwater table anywhere along the site. Section 301-4.671 states that all runoff from impervious surfaces or otherwise due to industrial and commercial development or due to construction of new roads shall be recharged on site by being diverted to stormwater infiltration basins covered by natural vegetation for surface infiltration to the greatest extent possible. 100% of non-processed stormwater is recharged on site up to and including the 100-year storm event. 100% of processed water either evaporates, is contained within finished products taken off-site, or stored for reuse in the wash plant process. Section 301, 4.672 outlines the items required for projects undergoing site plan review to demonstrate compliance with the Town of Sterling Protective Bylaw. Section 301, 4.672A requires that site plans delineate the boundaries of the groundwater protection districts. The submitted site plans documented the boundary of the groundwater protection district as requested by the planning board and peer reviewer. I know there was some question about that line, I believe.
So you have it.
Yeah, so the original submission, I believe, had this blue line shown. And then in subsequent review, it was moved up to the Mass DEP Zone 2 line. So right now, we're showing both. That location of that line is somewhat irrelevant with our design. We still have the clay line basin, we still have the tanks, and our processed water is still kept 100% separate from any storm water that could actually become a discharge. Section 301-4.672B requires the plan state the proposed uses, the wash plant, processed water basin, and associated improvements were labeled on the plans. Section 301-4672C states that the planning board must be satisfied that the project has been designed to eliminate any significant threat of contamination to the groundwater. In making such a determination, planning board shall give consideration to the simplicity, reliability, and feasibility of the control measures proposed, and the degree and threat to water quality which would result if the control measures fail. Any modifications, deletions, or additions to the plans required by the planning board for the purposes of ensuring protection of the groundwater must be made prior to the issuance of any building permit or certificates of use and occupancy. The applicant, in consultation with the planning board and peer reviewer, has proposed to fully capture all processed water in underground storage tanks and an at-grade clay-lined processed water basin. This processed water basin has been sized to contain the entire 100-year runoff volume from the wash plant area and the processed water basin. The water in the underground storage tanks and clay-lined process basin will be reused in the wash plant process and will not be discharged to the ground within the water protection district. So one thing that I did want to amend to that I pulled together in my preparation for today was that the definition of discharge in the groundwater protection district, section 4.6.3, defines discharge as the accidental or intentional disposal, deposit, injection, dumping, spilling, leaking, pouring, or placing of toxic or hazardous materials or hazardous waste upon or into any land or water such that it may enter the surface or groundwaters. So in this case, we are sending processed water either to underground storage tanks or to a clay-lined basin, which would prevent any migration. In addition, gravel and sand wash, which is basically what will be coming out of this processed water, is not listed as a hazardous waste according to 310 CMR 30.130 to 30 CMR 30.136 list of hazardous wastes. 310 CMR 30.099.1 defines a hazardous material as a material regulated as hazardous waste under 310 CMR 30.0 and CMR 310 40.0. And when I look back at 310 CMR 40.006, that's circled back to 310 CMR 30. So,
Frank, just for the general public
Yes, sir.
identification, you're citing DEP regulations.
Correct. I'm citing the DEP hazardous waste regulation, which is 310 CMR 30.
So that's the State Department of Environmental Regulation.
Correct. And the State Department of Environmental Regulations Mass Contingency Plan, which is 310 CMR 40. So those are the two state regulations that cover the vast majority of hazardous materials and hazardous waste and how they're supposed to be managed and disposed of, both of which,
And defined, right?
and defined, and both of which do not list this type of discharge, this type of processed water as a hazardous waste or material. In addition, the SDS for the flocculant, which I stated before, states that it is non-hazardous.
The only, you have down here that is hazardous is an eye irritant that is used, does the Sterling Fire Department, if they get called to the scene, know that there's an eye irritant that's, if it gets splashed into someone's face?
Will there be MSDS sheets on site that we could provide?
That isn't my question. Is the Sterling Fire Department notified that if they have an ambulance call to your place and an eye problem, they're gonna have time to go look at sheets of paper?
I would say, I don't know that standard operating procedure would be for a fire department to have an MSDS for every, for every contingency in an area that they serve, but we could certainly make sure they have that.
We're required
provided.
by MSHA regulation to have the MSDS sheets available in a binder readily available for.
That's like
fire.
OSHA
Yeah.
requirements?
It's exactly the same.
Okay.
Just OSHA doesn't apply in a mine. They don't have any jurisdiction, so, yeah. So they've made a provision in MSHA, which is Mining Safety Health Administration, for that provision exactly.
Okay.
So if we have paint on site, anything like that that we use, we have to have those readily available. Yeah.
So I think next what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask Jeff, we have Jeff from Graves Engineering, our peer reviewer. Jeff, could you give us some information on the clay-lined basin, which I believe is 3C on your plan? Do I have that right?
Yes, you do. It is 3C.
So is that going to be adequate, because a portion of that's on the Sterling groundwater, is that going to be adequate for what's overflowing from the cistern tanks into that to prevent it from being discharged onto the ground?
Well, I can tell you that a clay liner is typically used in situations such as this, where you want to line the bottom of something, material, especially liquid material, from penetrating into the ground. So it's not an unusual material, it's a commonly accepted material to prevent the vertical migration of water.
And if I may, the material that's specified is from the MassDOT specification for an impervious barrier.
And there's an under drain there, correct?
Yes.
That's going to send it back.
Above the line.
So
right?
if
Above
they
the
only have
line.
a chance to go, it's going to be collected basically and sent back, is what you're saying.
That is the intent, yes.
Yep. And the way it is piped, we discussed maintenance. It's not a typical stormwater basin, it's not going to see silt. It should not. The silt's being treated at the plant. So the intention is that that basin really should not be clean like a normal stormwater basin. So the risk of disturbing the clay, which I know you had consulted with Jeff initially, is not going to be an everyday process. There will be some leaves that blow onto it and debris over time, but it doesn't act as the same as a regular sedimentation basin. It's really a
We're
storage.
calling it a sedimentation basin.
It's really a storage basin is what we're calling, what we believe, process storage basin, yeah. So.
And the tanks themselves have a series of baffles as well to provide an additional level of sediment removal as needed. And the construction details are set up so that those are relatively easy to clean.
Looking over this, anybody have any questions for him? So, that Sterling groundwater protection line you don't have on the plan submitted, so
No, so I was unaware of the difference in the lines until very recently. We have the more restrictive Mass DEP Zone 2 line shown.
I believe it was requested at previous meeting to remove the old line and just show the further line than we are showing.
We'll have to get that put on there.
Yeah, I can certainly add
Certainly.
that with a conformed final set.
I think we originally, Carl, were asked to remove it to limit confusion on which line was the one we're looking at. So, if I remember correctly. But that was before Frank's.
That was before me, yes.
Could be cloudy on that.
I could provide a little information for you, Mr. Chairman. Forgot to introduce myself. My name is Jeff Walsh. I'm with Graves Engineering, the board's peer reviewer. Earlier on, before Dillis and Roy came on board, there was some confusion in general on which line was appropriate, whether it's the Zone 2 line or the line shown on the Town of Sterling overlay protection map. And if I recall correctly, the line was originally shown correctly under the current groundwater protection district regulations as following the Zone 2, which if you said it was more restrictive, I don't remember, but again, the point was it was the Zone 2. I had an older version of the groundwater protection district regulations, and I saw that it called out to follow the Town of Sterling map, which was, I believe, was less restrictive. And they made that revision, and then there was further discussion that I was looking at the wrong set of regulations. Once I dug deeper, I agreed, and we got it right.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yep. And that's my recollection of it, without looking at the papers and confirming that. About 99% sure.
Okay.
That's a good, remember that. Okay. So as far as, I have some other questions, but as far as the mechanics of this and how it works, because of where it's operating, does the board have any more questions for them? And then I'll open up to the public to see if they have any questions.
I'm just kind of curious, how are you gonna clean the basin so as not to damage that clay liner? I mean, I know you got the sand, but if you keep going at the sand, eventually you're gonna hit the clay. Because I just do have a concern with that sitting in the groundwater. Just because stuff can get down there. So what was your plan to clean it and
I
maintain that?
mean, we're planning on having an operating and maintenance plan that would be part of the plan set that the town would have a copy of, and Frank, you probably more
Yep.
speak to how we.
That was included in the design, design package. The basin itself was laid out to have a berm around it that is wide enough. Bear with me, I have far too many boards tonight. That is wide enough for an excavator to drive around it.
Won't be able to reach the basin without
And-
driving into it.
Yeah, so. I'll find the board when I don't need it anymore, however.
Detail for it, you want to show her?
I was gonna pull up the grading plan just to show the berm around the basin that provides full access. So, Onyx's maintenance activities will not require them to drive into the basin with tracked materials. We provided a berm around the basin, an access way that will allow them full access into the basin without having to drive into the basin.
To answer it, to add to that, it's a clay line basin with a grid of pipe in the vicinity of $50,000 or $80,000 worth of pipe.
In this area.
With sand, which is above the pipe. So what we would be doing is scraping down till we get to clean sand and then top dressing with new sand. Our intention is never to get through the piping, have to replace our own system, and or get into the clay liner. So the clay liner should really never be impacted.
Yes, so to
Just want to add some layman's terms as far as what you're concerned, but you'll hurt us to do that. It'll be very expensive if we mess that up, so.
To speak to that, there's approximately 15 inches of, 6 to 15 inches of sand borrow, sand material at the invert of the basin above the clay liner. So they would have to dig out a significant amount of material that's supposed to be there before getting to the liner itself.
And the only driving reason to clean it would be we would not be infiltrating that quick enough to serve our own purpose, and we would want to skim that off and just replace the top. So
Yeah.
it really, it shouldn't be like the normal thought of a sediment basin where it's getting constant sediment. We have a lot of provisions in place to make sure it doesn't happen, because if we're using dirty water to wash our stone, it's just, it's inevitably a bad practice. So, yeah, we're fighting the tide for no reason, so.
And I think before we get to any more questions, I have the response from Jeff at Graves for the peer review. Would you, I think we should go through these before we go to any further questions. If you want to read through them.
Yes.
You have them, you can use mine. We'll just go through them one at a time. The response from Jeff and then the response from
So, we received a comment review letter from Graves and Engineering in January 18th. So, would you like me to go through his?
About the February 15th.
Sure.
The January, that one back in January has
It's clean.
old stuff
Yeah.
and it's all been taken care of. This is the current one with the new.
Certainly. Graves and Engineering comments are as follow. Town of Sterling, Chapter 301 Protected Bylaw. GEI understands that the proposed building is to be used as a garage maintenance building to support the ongoing earth removal and material processing operation. GEI states no further comment necessary. Under hydrology and stormwater management, comment 11, no information was submitted. I'm going to jump, because this has history, I'm going to jump to the January 18th comment on this letter. January 18, 2024. The engineer has provided a stormwater report which has been reviewed by GEI. Please refer to the additional comments section below. GEI's follow-up is, as further explained below, the revised hydrology computations are in order and compliance with the Mass DEP stormwater standards is reasonable. General engineering comments. GEI has no comments or issues at this time. No further comment necessary. General comments. GEI understands that any proposed utilities will be reviewed by their respective utility owner or the Board of Health. No further comment necessary. Additional comments, January 18, 2024. Hydrology and stormwater management. GEI has reviewed the hydrology computations and found them to be in order, except for the following 7 comments. And GEI follow up with, GEI has reviewed the hydrology computations and found them to be in order. Next comment, in the post-development hydrology, the routing diagram shows that subcatchment 38S is directly routed to pond 40P, sediment basin 3A. However, on the post-development watershed map and on sheet C 2.3, the proposed flow path to be intercepted by the 24-inch riser pipe located in the northwest corner of the sediment basin 3D. The hydrology routing needs to be revised to show subcatchment 38S being directed towards pond 39, sediment basin 3D. And the response is acknowledged. The post-development hydrology routing has been revised accordingly. Comment 19. In the post-development hydrology, the stormwater system is reliant on a basin-to-basin configuration, modeled each stormwater independently, and utilize the storage indication method. The storage indication method assumes that there is a free outfall at the proposed discharge points and does not account for any tailwater. This approach is not appropriate for this application due to the stormwater runoff being intercepted and directed to each stormwater impoundment separately. The discharge ends may be submerged during storm events. The hydrology model should utilize the dynamic storage indication method to demonstrate that the stormwater system can operate as intended. and the GEI response is acknowledged. The hydrology model has been revised and is in order. Item 20. In the post-development hydrology, there are two subcatchments, 31S and 35S, that model the roof ground cover as unconnected impervious. Unconnected impervious accounts for stormwater discharge over pervious surfaces and is not appropriate in this application where the stretch of pervious surface is minimal and is gravel. Subcatchments 31S and 35S need to be revised to consider the roof runoff from the structures as impervious surfaces. And GEI's response is acknowledged. Post-development subcatchment ground covers have been revised accordingly. Item 21. In the proposed development hydrology, pond 39P, sediment basin 3D, does not properly model the outlet configuration shown on the plans. For example, on sheet C 2.3 of the plans, sediment basin 3D shows a riser pipe on the northern side of the basin near a 448 contour. Presumably for impoundment water to traverse into the outlet pipe, it would need to reach the inlet elevation of the riser pipe, not shown, prior to exiting the basin. Further, the hydrology model shows two 24-inch outlet pipes, whereas only one 24-inch pipe is shown on the plans. The hydrology model needs to be revised to demonstrate that sediment basin 3D can operate as shown on the plans, or the plans need to be revised to be consistent with hydrology. And GEI's response is acknowledged. The hydrology has been revised accordingly and coordinates with the plans. Item 22. In the post-development hydrology, pond 40P, sediment basin 3A, accounts for storage up to elevation 448. However, on sheet C 2.4, the 448 contour does not enclose around the basin, but instead extends to basin 3B. The engineer needs to demonstrate how the stormwater surface area associated with elevation 448 was derived. The response is acknowledged. Additional topographic information has been provided, and the sediment basin was properly modeled. Item 23. In the post-development hydrology, pond 42P, sediment basin 3B, accounts for storage up to elevation 448.5, and during the 100-year storm event reaches elevation 448.27. The area modeled appears to overlap with a portion of pond 40P, sediment basin 3A, and at its peak elevation will create a hydraulic connection between the two basins. For example, on sheet C 2.3, the northern extent of the 448 contour for sediment basin 3B follows a swale adjacent to sediment basin 2B and opens easterly towards the proposed and existing scales. The engineer needs to demonstrate that there is a hydraulic disconnect between the two basins and that the stormwater basins can operate as intended by the design. GEI's response, acknowledged. The plans have been revised and additional topographic information has been provided to demonstrate a hydrologic disconnect. Item 24. In the post-development hydrology, pond 41P, sediment basin 2B, does not properly model the existing sediment basin 2B as shown on sheet C 2.3. For example, the model shows a surface area at elevation 448 that is less than elevation 447, whereas the plans show a larger footprint. The plans and the hydrology model need to coordinate with each other. Acknowledged. The hydrology model has been revised and coordinates with the plans. Item 25. Compliance with the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook and standards is reasonable provided that the following two comments are addressed. And the response is compliance with the Mass DEP Stormwater Handbook and standards is reasonable. Item 26. On sheet C 2.3, sediment basin 3B needs to have an emergency outlet, likely on the northern berm, to prevent scour or breach of the earth impoundment if the basin unexpectedly fills higher than anticipated. The response, an emergency spillway outlet has been provided. However, the riprap armoring for said spillway should extend to the toe of the exterior side. Item 27. The design engineer should add a stone check dam to basin 3B to create a forebay compartment to better preserve the basin's bottom infiltration capacity outside of the forebay. Acknowledged. A sediment forebay has been provided and the hydrology was revised accordingly. General engineering. Item 28. There are several drainage infrastructure components for the stormwater management system that are missing pertinent information. For example, on sheet C 2.3, the 24-inch riser pipe within stormwater basin 3D does not show the elevation for the inlet into the riser pipe. Further, on sheet C 2.3, the proposed water quality unit near the northeastern side of stormwater basin 3B does not include the rim elevation or invert elevations, and no construction detail was provided. The engineer needs to review the drainage infrastructure regarding stormwater management system and provide the necessary information on the plans. Follow-up response, acknowledged. The pertinent information for the stormwater drainage infrastructure has been provided on the plans. For the record, there are 3 typographical errors on sheet C 2.3 regarding which detail sheet to reference for the proposed risers and the water quality unit. Item 29, on sheet C 2.3, a proposed tree line is shown within the work area along the northern end of sediment basin 3B. The tree line needs to be revised to show the proposed tree line needed to accommodate the proposed earthwork. And GEI's response, acknowledged. The plans have been revised to appropriately show the proposed tree line. Item 30, there are several proposed contour layers that are inadvertently shown on the incorrect proposed contour lines. For example, on sheet C 2.4 within the eastern side of sediment basin 3C, there's a 446 contour label shown on the 447 contour line. Furthermore, on sheet C 2.3 within sediment basin 3D at the southwest section, there are 448, 449, and 450 labels that are incorrect. And the response is acknowledged. The contour labels have been revised and are in order. That was the last of the comments. We would have no issue in extending the riprap spillway down the slope. What I would like to note on that plan is that it has been revised slightly due to some Conservation Commission comments from their peer review. Now, it's a little tough to see on this plan, but it's the most up-to-date one. We needed to shift the grading of the breakout for the basin, the downslope grading, out of an isolated wetland area. Potential. I call it a flagged area. It doesn't meet the definition of a wetland. It is non-jurisdictional. In the interest of expediency, we regraded that part of the basin slope to put in a retaining wall. The spillway was slid north so that it bypassed that retaining wall, but we can certainly extend that down to the bottom toe slope as Graves requested.
So you'd have to make that revision on the plan.
We would need to make that on the final submitted plans. They've been submitted to Conservation for the stormwater permit process.
So Jeff, you've reviewed the subsequent edits to their plan, haven't you?
Not past my letter that Mr. McPartlin just spoke of.
I forwarded those to Jeff on Tuesday, I believe, which is when we needed to get them in for conservation. There were no changes hydraulically or hydrologically to the basin. So the storage of the basin was the same. All the interior volumes are the same. It was just the toe slope grading. It's entirely possible that once we can get out and look at this flagged area during April and May to determine if there's any potential vernal pool activity, that the grading might go back to the way it was. If we can determine that it is not a vernal pool and it's a non-jurisdictional, basically a puddle, it doesn't meet the volume and depth requirements for a wetland, the grading will likely go back. But in the interest of expediency with the Conservation Commission, we propose that small grading change.
And the meeting for that's upcoming, right?
Our meeting for that is Tuesday, correct. And I think the other issue that was flagged was basically a drafting label issue with locating the detail sheet.
Does the board have any more questions? So I'll open it up for the public. Does the public have any questions on this? For Dillis and Roy? State name, please.
Brian Klein, Hotel Road. Frank, I think you did a really good job to explain where 92% of the water and possible flocculant mix goes. I'm actually most concerned about what's actually going on with 8%.
So, if I may, the 8% is primarily either lost through evaporation, or the vast majority of it is contained within the material that is then taken off-site. So, if you've ever had a delivery of dirt at your property, the top dries out quite a bit, but then you start digging into it, it's relatively moist on the inside of the pile. That's the retained water. So that's where that 80% water ends up.
Okay, so when the slurry comes out of the wash plant and it, it's kind of dried by the process, possibly without a flocculant, possibly with, depending on the situation, does it get conveyed up the hill or hauled up the hill? Or does it stay in the basin? Did I misunderstand something? I sensed that it was coming away.
The final material or the process?
The wet material with 8% liquid in it.
Yes, so.
Where exactly does it go physically on the site plan?
So.
We call it thickened mud, Brian,
Okay.
just so you know. So
I recall from a prior meeting that it goes up on the hill, but I just wanted to clarify.
So that, you're talking about that and not the finished product. So, when Onyx is, looking to dispose of that, what do you call it?
It's called thickened mud.
Thickened-
So the
that-
thickened
that-
mud is different than the standard product? The
Correct.
standard product is getting shot right into a 30-yard dump or
The
something?
standard product will be. The standard product will be sorted by this configuration of basically sifters and screws, and then put into one of several piles, which would then be accessed by a loader to dump into a dump truck to take off site.
So are these wet dump trucks? Because, I mean, my training in percolation theory and things like that suggests that this water's not, I mean, there's capillary action that keeps it in the solids to some extent, but what keeps it from draining out on a roundabout, for instance? You said it was slippery. I'm just kind of wondering how you know.
It's going through, so 8% should not allow it to leach out, Brian, from any vehicles. It's such a low level. Typical material you dig out of a sand embankment, in an open sand pit, put aside washing, is somewhere between 5 and 8% in the embankment. We've added an ag dry system to this, which is an added process that vibrates the final product to vibrate all the remaining water and potential flocculant that could be suspended in that water out and recover it before it goes to the stockpiles.
Okay.
So the stockpile end product should be saleable, and there'll be nothing coming out of the back of any trucks leaving.
And it would be roughly equivalent to if you just dug into a sand vein and dumped it into a dump truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I get that, that's the core product, but then the
your question
thickened
on
mud,
the mud,
can
yeah.
you speak to the thickened mud, where it goes temporarily or?
It's easiest to just put that map up, the one behind us.
Yeah.
Zoom it out. Right here, proposed underflow ponds, these two.
Okay.
So that's up on the quarry deck.
Yeah.
It's an area that will lay out approximately 2 to 3 feet thick of thickened mud. You're talking about, of the amount of tons of material washing every day, it's somewhere around 10 tons to 20 tons of material that you're gonna generate in an 8-hour shift. It's gonna get pumped up there at a 50% solid rate. So the mud itself is 50% water, 50% mud, sediment.
Pump to what point?
Pumped up to those basins that are constructed on the floor, and then they'll
Outside of-
evaporate. Whatever water's in them will evaporate out of it.
And that's outside of Zone 2 and Sterling.
Correct.
That's important.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
So at 50% water, how do we know that's not, is that a clay basin?
Nope, it's not. It's on the rock floor of the quarry up above.
Okay, so how do you know the rock floor doesn't have faults that would allow it to percolate down and through and?
We don't, but we've located that beyond the district for that reason, to get, if that were to happen, beyond the protection zone.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's graded,
So.
it's graded positively away
So
from the protection zone.
Yeah, so the green line is the outer zone, Zone 2 line, that is more restrictive,
Yeah.
and it will be discharged beyond that line.
Okay. My concern is like kind of a, I don't know, hydrogeologically or whatever, is that if that percolates down, if that crosses over to the perennial stream that's on the lot line between Amarillo and the Onyx properties, it makes it into, you know, the surface water as well as aquifer. And it's a soluble chemical, and which appears to be benign in the year 2024, but, you know, it would be best to, you know, consider, you know, any risk that there'd be percolation from that point, even if it's outside of the jurisdictional zone, because there may be some potential, like, is it hydraulically disconnected, I guess is the language you were using.
I believe so.
Yeah, so and is this 50/50 mud that's being discharged, John, is this likely the majority of the water going to run out of that, or is it going to evaporate? So what we're looking at is the water evaporating, which would leave behind the mud, which would have the flocculant in it.
But to evaporate mud, you need high surface area. If you have high surface area and you're not under cover, you're exposed to stormwater events.
But you're talking about, basically that product meets and exceeds the permeability spec of even the basin. It's highly fine, extremely fine material that it's really gonna seal itself, right? So if let's just say one day we pump in 10 tons and it starts to dry, the next day we add 10 tons on top of it. The 10 tons from the day before, most likely in a summer day, is dry.
Yeah.
It's self-protecting of itself is how we view it, and that's what we've been told by our consultants from Phoenix. And ultimately, you want to lay it out on a very thin layer so the sun will get to it, and then it'll aspirate and dry and crack, just like you see in an old salt bed in the desert.
Okay.
And then we would load that material and haul it away.
So you think, how large of an area is that area where you spread out the mud?
Those were sized appropriately to be able to put like a 2-inch layer down every day.
Okay.
Yeah, so these areas shown on this plan, which is at 100 scale, these are it's like 80, basically 80 by 50 areas.
Two of them.
Two of them, yes.
And if we need 3 or we need 5, we'll
And
certainly
there's
add.
there's plenty of space as they're running their operation and they figure out what works best.
Yeah.
They can put 2, 3, 4 more up there.
And the intention is, once it does dry, there's 2 basins. For one you pump into for a week, the next one you pump into for the week, you alternate basins, and then during that, we would pull the dry material from there, put it into a stockpile, because now it's dry, and we'd haul it off-site. It's gonna be sold as bedding material for electric lines and piping, and
It's
fine bedding material.
It's not there forever. It's not like they're backfilling on site with it. It's like it's another saleable material for.
Yeah, it's not waste. It won't be waste.
Correct. It's not waste.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have one question. It has nothing to do with this plan. I've gotten numerous phone calls, including himself as a taxpayer, of blasting coming down out of your place. And it's shaking my house, which is probably about 3 miles away. What's the damage gonna be down the road? You know, so you can seismograph, you do whatever you wanna do, but I don't think the fire department is over checking every time they blast there.
They have to be there by law.
They can say, but.
Every single time.
Right, well, I can tell you that they weren't there one time that was behind my house, that it was my birthday, and they weren't there, because I drove up to the fire station and found out that the guy was sitting there. And he said that there was, quote, blasting at Fort Devens. Well, I have a friend of mine that's a lieutenant for the state police that works at Devens, and there was no artillery on Devens that day.
We do get mistaken too for blasting that goes on at other quarries around the area, so I can't speak to that day, I don't know personally, but I know that we are not allowed to load explosives without the fire detail on site. We can't take them out of the truck and put them in the hole without them standing there. Just so you know.
I'm just letting you know what I've witnessed myself.
Yeah.
And I've gotten numerous phone calls from it. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Hi, Cindy Miller from Champion Kennels. We had 2 dogs that, on that day that you're talking about, became lethargic, didn't eat when they went home, and it was from the explosion. It shook all of the walls of Champion
Okay,
Hills.
well, I'm gonna stop you right there because we're getting off the beaten track here and we don't
I
have
just
all
want to
night,
say
so
it.
we're just sticking to.
But my point to you is that we're trying to approve we're trying to approve a plan, but I'm the one that gets the phone calls. Maybe I should give one to
The blasting
you.
takes place no matter what. They
I
have a
understand
permit for
that,
right now.
But
So this doesn't
there's
do anything
controlled
for
and
blasting.
not controlled.
So
That's what
one
I'm
thing,
saying.
one thing that we did put in place, that was a request for our ground removal permit that's new this year, is a hotline that you can register for right now. Do you want to speak to this a little bit on how it works? For anybody
It's
in
kind of
public
like
that's
a reverse
curious.
911. We send out a message, it's typically 3 hours before. We give a window anywhere between 30 minutes and an hour as to when we're going to blast. So I can certainly add anybody.
Anybody that would
And
like.
truthfully, I have no problem with your project. I'm upfront in saying that. It's unnerving when you get phone calls. That's all.
Unfortunately, what we do, that's the only way for us to break it, and there's regulations in place that we're adhering to, I promise you. And the fire department is checking. We have a very good relationship with the fire department in town, we believe. And well-respecting, and we respect them. And I'm unaware of any time that we blasted that they were not on site. So,
That has absolutely never happened.
yeah, so.
Okay, I have a couple more questions for you and then
Sure.
you all set,
You
John?
got, no, somebody with his hand up.
Yeah, Steve Lambros, Chad Lane. That same blast, I have gone down to the fire department and I was told they don't monitor the blasting. I was told there's a third party
They-
involved.
Absolutely do. Yes, we do have a third-party seismologist that places multiple units that takes the readings, and that very day, he has to provide it to the fire department. And they are required to provide it to you upon request. The fire department is.
And I'm not here to fight the project, but my question really is about, is the project, does it increase production throughput?
No.
Okay.
No. It's just basically finishing the product a little bit further than the way we have it now.
It changes the end product.
Yeah, yeah. And it should help for everybody involved that's concerned about any kind of dust. We're gonna have water in the product, so blowing dust, that's been a concern in the past because there's not currently any washing going on. It should be mitigated by adding this process. So on the weekends when nobody's there, the piles will actually naturally be moist, so they're not gonna blow around like everybody has seen in the past.
And they're also not reducing any of the other dust mitigation. So this will provide more.
It should be better for everybody, I hope.
John, can you take a minute and talk about what we're gonna have out there once you folks are done clearing that site?
Currently, what I can say we have is we're gonna have a flat site, no hole. This isn't like a quarry that kids are gonna jump into full of water. Our plan that we provided to the gravel removal permit requires that we show sloped embankments that are vegetated. The topsoil that's stripped off the site is at the top of the hill and at the bottom of the hill currently. The site will be reclaimed if it's not developed. And if we were to develop it, we would obviously have to come back in front of the board and modify our
So
plans.
flat level land available for industrial development.
Right, Steve, if I may.
10% grade, yeah.
Yeah, so there will be a buffer maintained around the site at basically level. And then coming down at, I think it's a 3-on-1 slope?
Yes.
Yeah, so a 3-on-1 slope, which is mobile. When I'm talking about side slopes and at these boards, I like to say that a 3-on-1 slope is what you can comfortably drive a lawnmower on. And it's steeper than that, you feel like you're gonna fall. 3-on-1 slope, you feel pretty safe. Coming down, there'll be, like John said, 10% continuously graded, topsoil, loam and seeded.
And just to continue the water flow where it's been going, so we don't, have water tributaries that are changing. The
Yes.
purpose of this is that still water will go where it's been going forever. Right? We'll misspeak to that, please.
And so worst case scenario, how the site is left when they're done, is a big grassed area with some hills. Some slopes.
And or the economy changes and we come back to you guys and we're a part of another project, I don't know, but at this time it's way off in the distance.
But that would be another application and more review and more chance for input.
Understood.
Frank, I have a couple more questions for you.
Yes.
So, I'd like to add the groundwater line. When I look at the plan, where the septic system's located on the plan, there's no
No protection for anybody parking on top of the system or parking on top of the tank. So we'd be looking to provide some kind of bollards or something to put there unless you have a rated tank.
It's rated for H20.
Is it rated?
Yes, yeah, H20 rated tank, and I believe the
Tight tank?
No.
It was just rated to park
Will
on.
not be a tight tank. So the application of Board of Health is forthcoming, but, so what's happening with the septic is there will be a tank and a pump chamber adjacent to the maintenance building, and there'll be a force main running out to this area to a leaching area.
You've not got the approval from the Board of Health yet?
We have not gotten the Board of Health yet.
I just want to be clear on it, that's all.
No, yep, that's a forthcoming application. If we needed to move anything significant, there was no point in making that application without wrapping up the site plan.
Okay, this one, Jeff maybe can help me out on this. So typically when we have detention basins like what you have, 3B, they're fenced in. See that as a depth of 5 feet? Am I reading that right?
Roughly, yes, yeah.
Think we should have fencing around that?
Well, I'm concerned with their ability to remove sediment from any of the basins where necessary, and whereas this is an industrial area, my opinion would be fences for this particular use of this land at this time wouldn't be necessary, be more of an impediment. But later on, when they come forward with whatever, you'd see how a fence plays into the final development of the property.
Correct.
That's my opinion.
I would design basins differently for warehouse development or housing. I'm not saying how housing is going here, but for this use, I had no qualms with not having the fencing, but those would be something that would be on a different type of projects. Yes. Is there fencing?
It's the depth.
So there is fencing around the site itself. So there's gates.
Just keep vehicular traffic in. There's boulders placed so vehicles and people can't drive through freely, but there's not a fence.
Okay.
On your building, you have a floor drain leading to a tank.
Yes.
We have no detail on that tank. It has to be a double-wall tank. We have
Yes.
no detail on the plan. Can you put detail on the plan as to what to be used?
That industrial tank was being detailed on the Board of Health submittal. We
should
can
be on the
certainly add that information to our final drawings, yes.
Brian?
Frank, I had a question. You mentioned Concom and you had a deadline, like, I think Tuesday, I assume
Yes.
this week, to get something to them. Is that for their meeting next week that so they had a week to review it?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so it's part of NOI process? or-
Yes, it's part of the NOIs that were previously submitted. We were able to coordinate with their peer reviewer, Ecotech, on a site walk, and we made some adjustments to some of the wetland lines, and they had a couple of other comments that we cleared up and resubmitted to Concom on Tuesday.
Okay, and is it correct that Ecotech is only doing the NOI side and not the stormwater side, or who's doing the
Correct.
stormwater? Are you, or?
I had submitted for the stormwater permit. My understanding was that Concom was going to rely on Ecotech solely for stormwater. Because they were going to rely on the Graves letter for stormwater.
And it's been reviewed.
Correct, yes.
And it's in order.
Correct.
So if it's, okay, so if Graves reviewed it does that mean that Concom approves it? Did Concom relinquish its jurisdiction, so to speak?
No.
And hand it to the engineer, because they haven't met to do any of these approvals?
No.
And stormwater hasn't even been on any of their agendas.
They weren't going to have a separate peer review. They had a peer review of the wetland line. Now, we're getting a little far afield into other words here. Concom had a peer review of the wetland line for the riverfront application and the buffer zone application that was reviewed by Ecotech. My understanding, and I don't want to put words in another commission's mouth, is that they were going to wait for the Graves review for planning board to open and make a determination on the stormwater permit.
And I have correspondence from the Conservation Commission indicating such.
Yes, they didn't want to double dip. They knew that Graves was going to provide their normal thorough review, so they didn't want to have a third finger in.
Yeah, okay, and just a recommendation, if there's any way to get them to put that on their agenda for next week, if there's.
I would love it.
Nudge it, because I didn't see it. I think they have the 2 NOIs, but I don't think they have stormwater on there, and it might go hand in hand.
I think they have what they need. Okay, so I got one more question for you. Your plan's not showing the snow storage either, so you can't have like any of the salts or anything into the Sterling groundwater district, so can your final plan show where you're going to be putting the snow?
Yes, I know, I believe we had some areas bubbled. I will make sure they're clear. So we had some snow storage around here.
So they're labeled, Frank? I thought they were on a sheet.
They're labeled, but there's a lot of labels.
Yeah, I remember one, it's not consistent on all the sheets, Carl, but we could add it to more sheets.
We can make sure I can make sure.
We tried to kind of back out of the design and try to put that stuff on a separate page.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I think it's on a few pages, we could add it to other pages. It's not a problem.
Folks. So, okay, so I would say at this point, we need a final set of plans. We need a final set of plans to be reviewed and
Yeah,
Get to the
you're
Concom
clear
meeting.
on what edits you need to make to the plans.
Yes, snow
storage,
extending the riprap line,
Sterling groundwater
groundwater
line.
protection,
and making sure that the town has that line shown on.
the title labeling.
Correct,
that we
yes.
discussed earlier.
Yeah.
So I would say, send them away to make those changes, have Graves have one last look at it.
Yep, and we'll move, we can continue them to the 7th.
If you can get that
If we
done.
can get it done by then. We have a meeting on the 7th.
We have a meeting on the 7th that we can continue you to if you think you can get Graves. Jeff, when do you think you can get it to Graves? And Jeff, will you have enough time to review it?
I can turn it around, let's say within 5 to 7 days.
We're only talking a few minor edits as
Yeah,
it is.
this is a light lift. I should be able to get this done by early next week.
Possible conditions here, I'll need some time to give that some thought, so. All right, so that being said,
One other thing. You've seen the draft conditions of approval.
Correct.
I think one you've already taken care of. You've already applied for a notice of intent and stormwater permit from Conservation Commission, yes? I can take that one off.
That is in process, yes.
Okay.
finalize those for the next meeting. I'll give it some thought. So all that being said, I'll welcome a motion that we continue to March 7th.
Continue to March 7th.
Have a second?
Second.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None, ayes have it. See you on 7th.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for the presentation.
Maybe you feel that. Yeah, you are decent. You feel it with Let's see you Tuesday. We're talking about Tuesday.
It doesn't work on Monday.
Yeah. Thank you.
Even though that's not in regulations from the state.
All right. Next up, we have a public hearing to review a site plan for a 14,000 square foot industrial building and reduction in parking at 14 Leggett Hill Road, tax map 24 lot 13. The applicant is Broomfield Laboratories. So first off, I want to say that we're not going to make a decision on this tonight because there hasn't been adequate time for the engineer to respond to the comments made by peer review. So we've agreed to let Hannigan Engineering do their presentation, ask any questions we want to ask. The public will be able to ask any questions they want to ask, and then we're going to end up doing a continuance. So,
Mr. Chairman?
yes.
From the interdepartmental review meeting, I received comments back from DPW and Graves. None of the other departments had comments.
Thank you.
And those comments have been passed on to the applicant.
Right. That being all said, we have Bill Hannigan from, our old friend Bill Hannigan from Hannigan Engineering here.
It's like seeing a jackalope.
So, Bill?
For the record, Bill Hannigan with Hannigan Engineering. So the project is it's an existing building on at 14 Leggett Hill Road. The company Broomfield has purchased the property. They're working inside the building, doing some fit up right now. Are they inside the building yet, or?
Right now, they're just doing some interior paint.
Right. They're doing some cleanup stuff right now to get ready. They're going to be occupying the building. And this project that we're in front of you is to actually construct a new building on the rear portion of the site containing a 14,000 square foot in area. About half of that will be manufacturing and half of that will be warehouse. It will be sprinklered. But what I'll do is I'll go through the submittal letter and kind of bring everybody up to speed of where we're at right now. I do have some responses to the comments that were made, and we can jump into them after that. So, as I said, the project is located at 14 Leggett Hill Road, approximately 2 acres of land, and it contains an 8,568 square foot building, which is utilized for warehouse space. With some limited office space in the previous operation, they're going to maintain the office space there in that use. The site was previously disturbed, with most of the area in the rear of the property being a combination of pavement and grindings and essentially impervious in the back. Its exterior storage is what it was used for before by the previous owner. Areas subject to protection from conservation were flagged along the west side of the property, right along the property line. That area is a wetland that basically extends all the way back to Route 12, and there's a catch basin structure that overtops and allows that water to be passed through to Leggett Hill Road on the site here. The DPW was very glad that we found that for them because they've been looking for it for a couple of years apparently. So on the east side of the project, on the other side of the road, there's also a wetland area. So that the buffer zones extend onto the property to about this location for the front building existing, and about this location for the rear building. Okay. So we do have filing for conservation. We are meeting with them on Tuesday as well to go through this project. The main access to the property, right now in front of the property, if you've been by, and I'm sure you have, it's really just an open space of pavement. There's no real containment for parking or direction relative to, you kind of just pull in and do what you want. What we're proposing is to add a landscape island, so that the flow of traffic would be that the vehicles would come in here. Essentially, the front section would be for pedestrian or regular vehicles versus trucks. They have an angled parking situation in there, and then they would have a one-way path through the front of the property with an exit back out on the Leggett Hill Road. The trucks and other employees would go out to the back The truck maneuvering would be allowed to pull into this area here and back into this loading area, and then on the turnout, it would be able to exit the property that way. And we have some turning radius and template information that we've provided for that.
Okay, so the next one, when you come in, you can have that template?
I have that tonight.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's really the flow of traffic. There'll be additional parking in the rear on both the north and the south side for employees, and most of the employees will be probably parking in this area here, and then this will be for some additional employees' office, and sometimes they have, which is not very often if they happen to have a sales guy come in to talk to them about something, or they do most of their stuff out of their Leominster office for that purpose. If they happen to come over here for some purpose, they'll have additional parking. So that's part of the reason for the reduction in parking request, is that there's not going to be a lot of demand for parking with this particular use.
Will there be any ADA compliant parking spaces?
I will get to that. Right now, I'm going through the submittal.
No,
I have all the comments now, yeah?
Okay.
So, under the bylaws, the total parking requirement would be 38 spaces, okay? And what we're showing on the property right now is 29 from the original submittal. So what that means is that we would be asking for a reduction in parking of about 9 spaces to make that work, okay? So the use by the company, at most, they're projecting around 20 employees at this site. They're probably looking at more like 15, but they want to use the number 20 so they have some room for some growth if they happen to get it. But they probably would never use the full 29 spaces that we have shown in the plan. So to create extra parking, one, it's additional cost. It's additional impervious area, which we try to reduce that as we go along through these projects. And then from there, the massaging of the site will make it so that we have some landscape abilities around the property. So that there's a host of reasons why we think it's justified, and we'll get into that. As I said before, the drainage from the site.
Bill, hold on, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Please, we're trying to concentrate on what he's saying with you talking. I can't listen to two people at the same time, thank you.
So, the utilities in the site basically consist of the drainage, which I spoke of earlier. There's an existing catch basin that's in this back area here, which actually goes underneath the building and connects to the system out in the street, so that everything kind of is pushed this way with respect to the drainage on the site existing. On the proposed, we have some additional, we've kind of massaged the pavement to send the water into different directions. We have catch basins in different locations to pick up some of the water. So there's a catch basin here, here, and here, and that picks up the water from the back half of the site. We also have a drainage basin, which I'm going to make sure I give you the right type of basin. I believe that this is an infiltration. No, it's not. So this is it's a rain garden type of it's a detention basin, basically what it comes down to, but it's going to be worked with rain garden. That will connect to have a underdrain system, which will connect to this pipe here, and all that will be brought through to this location here. At this location here, so again, I want to make sure, 3, 4, I believe 4 is the water, yeah. That then goes underneath the building. We'll be replacing the pipe going underneath the building, okay, with a ductile iron pipe. And then from there, this manhole right here will have a water quality unit inside of it to clean the water prior to it being discharged to the town system, okay. The septic system is located in this area here. We had an extensive review of that with the Board of Health. The records on what was there from a long time ago were essentially non-existent. So what we did was we went out and we opened up the system on one end, and we snaked all the lines and cambered them to find out what the length of the lines were. The system was functioning fine, it had no problems. But as we did that, we found that the condition of the distribution box and the tank were questionable. So what we're doing is we're going to put in a brand new septic tank, and the distribution box has actually already been replaced, which we did during that inspection process. So the Board of Health agent has passed the system as being compliant and usable for this project. We are adding some components to the septic system, mainly to pick up a restroom area back in this building here. We have a connection to a manhole, which will then go into the septic tank. From there, because of the difference in elevations of the different piping systems, it would now be a pump system, which we've designed, we've submitted that. That's part of the plans that we've submitted with this package. That information's on the plans. We had a meeting with the Board of Health, not the board, but the admin for the Board of Health. She reviewed the plans, she saw what we were doing, talked with Dave Favreau, and everything's in the right frame of mind for that. So prior to, once we get done this whole process, we'll have to apply obviously for a permit to put the new tanks in and get those put in as part of the construction. So the drainage and the septic, now the water, presently there is an existing domestic line that feeds the existing building. During our department meeting, we found that they had no records of that, where that was either. They were able to go out and trace it. It turns out it's right where we're showing the proposed line coming on the property. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in the new line here, which will be a 6-inch line going to this point right in here. There's going to be a hydrant here for flushing and for emergency access purpose. This will then feed a sprinkler line into this building here, as well as a domestic for this building here. This will also now, we're going to, wherever we cross the existing domestic line for this building, which does not require sprinklers because of its size, we'll then pick that up and attach that to the new line coming on the property.
So you have to resize from there forward.
We'll be terminating,
The next
Sean
building?
Pepper from DR Pool and Construction. We're going to be terminating the existing tap for the domestic. The water department has asked us to discontinue that. We'll cut it in the street, cap it. And then, as Bill had said, we'll intercept the existing domestic line in the existing building, and we'll tie into that when we bypass to go out to the building out back. So that existing curb cut, curb box will be discontinued and filled and blanked off. They've requested that we don't tap the line. They're requesting that we cut the line and put a T in. So it's going to be a mechanical entrance onto that line.
So this will be a 6-inch line coming on the property? Okay, and then from there we'll connect the domestic to that, and the other domestic here, then we'll do the 6-inch off of that to get to the fire.
And the only thing that we're drawing off of on the domestic side in the new facility are the 2 bathrooms, to support the day-to-day operations in concert with the other building. So relatively open building inside other than the 2 bathrooms and the mechanical.
So we also have provisions for snow storage and landscaping shown on the plan. Obviously, snow storage along the windrows and different areas around the property. We have some landscaping that's been added in this area here, and I believe there's been some other ones.
Yeah, to the other side of the driveway.
Yeah. So those should comply. The site lighting, we're looking at using just wall pack units off the building. It shouldn't need a lot of lighting because it's really just the vehicular traffic in this area here. There may be some walking back and forth, but that's really the limit of where it would be, and then some security lighting around the building.
All those fixtures will be night sky compliant with refractors, so they can be adjusted should any overshadow issues come up.
We don't anticipate any pole lighting being required for the project. Anything else, Sean?
Just let me know, Bill.
So that's essentially the site plan aspect of things, and then we can get into the special permit stuff. So with respect to the site plan, we did receive comments from Graves. We did get those, and I actually have those that we've reviewed, and I emailed them to Steve earlier tonight, late, I get it. And so we can go through those if you'd like, because I have response in there, it's all relatively quick.
I think it would be best if we waited until the next meeting for that, because that's when we'll be making, otherwise you're gonna end up doing it all over again.
That's fine, so I'll hand it to Steve and he can do his distribution.
Thank you.
Okay. So with respect to the special permit, the items that we need to talk about relative to that is the items relative to the granting authority and what they can grant and what they need to look at. So the first one is social economic community needs, which are served by the proposed. The requested reduction in parking expected to aid social, economic, and community needs of the town of Sterling. By allowing this reduction in parking, the applicant will be allowed to expand the existing space at the location and provide additional employment opportunities in the area. Additionally, the new business will improve the economic needs of the town by providing additional tax revenue generated by the business in the new building construction. The property is located primarily within an industrial area and is consistent with the social and neighborhood character of the area. So in general, this is what the building in the front and the building in the back are going to look relatively similar. based on the number of employees that the owner is anticipating having here, 15 to 20, we're showing 29 spaces on the plan, okay? So that, we think that I would personally like to reduce it even further, but the requirement is 38, which I think may be in excess of what's needed for this particular use. Traffic flow and safety, including parking and loading. The property currently does not have any designated parking areas around the site, and the immediate frontage of the property is fully paved and unmarked. This inherently creates an uncontrolled traffic condition along the frontage of the property and within the roadway. Proposed improvements to the site will create formal driveway access points and designated parking areas on the property. This will improve the traffic flow and safety both on the property and in the immediate area by confining vehicular movements to certain areas. The loading areas for the two buildings will be off the main driveway, and vehicular movements for loading and unloading would occur on the site. The reduction in parking is expected to be consistent with this, as the total employee count of the property is less than the total provided parking. Thus, vehicular traffic flow and safety concerns are adequately addressed. So as I said before, and the turning templates are actually in that package for both the WB40 and a WB67 vehicle. And basically, coming onto the property, the vehicles are allowed to pull into this area, back into the loading dock, and then be able to exit the property for both the WB40 and WB67.
A little clarification on, it's not a loading dock, it's a loading platform. What they do is they manufacture machines and equipment for electrical generation, transformers, generators, big equipment. The building itself physically will have two 20-ton copper iron bridge cranes along with 5-ton cranes. So this isn't stuff that they're going to pick up with fork trucks. So what they do is they bring it to the outside door. The flatbeds come in, they have equipment on it that then set it on the back. So it's a loading platform, it's not an elevated dock per se as you would see in some type of facility. So everything is ground mounted and then the trucks pull out accordingly.
Now, do I have it right? Is half that building warehouse and half manufacturing?
Correct. So it's going to work in concert with the existing facility. This building is actually an accessory building to the front building. All the paperwork, office area, everything, the dynamics will be done in the front. The back is where the manufacturing. So they don't only manufacture, they also repair and rebuild. One of their bigger clients is National Grid. Everybody's waiting for transformers. Well, these are the guys that actually rewind them and rebuild them. Some pretty enormous equipment. So they will be physically manufacturing. They'll be fabbing in the front building, manufacturing and building the components in the back, and storage of those components for shipping. So the manufacturing side, the two bathrooms would be located over here with the mechanical room. Better than probably half of the building is manufacturing. Then there's a staging area from here to loading where all that manufactured equipment comes in. That stuff does not stay on the floor long. They build that equipment and it goes right out the door. It's pretty high demand. So it's not just the manufacturing, it's also the repair of transformers and generators. So those two buildings will work in concert with each other. And again, they expect 10 to 15 employees. We're saying 20. They have two locations, their main location in Leominster as well as another location in Bolton.
Bolton.
That's correct.
Okay. I wanted to ask if it's the same company.
It is the same company. They've been established since 1948, family-owned company. I see this as a huge boon for Sterling if we can make this work for you folks.
Right, so the third item is adequacy of utilities and other public services. We reviewed the water, the sewer, the drain. So those are the public utilities, or the utilities for the project, not necessarily public. But then the public services, we're not anticipating that this would have any real impact on public services for the town. Specifically, you would think about fire and police. When we had our meeting with them a week or so ago, they really didn't have any comments, and I believe they even submitted the fact they had no comments regarding this. They did have some questions during the meeting. Nothing that was more relative to building code than site. Okay, so I think that's really where that falls. Neighborhood character and social structure. The property is located within the limited industrial zoning district, surrounded by similar industrial uses. The intended use is permitted by right under the protective bylaws, and the reduction in parking is not expected to negatively impact the neighborhood character or any of the area or any social structures. The impacts on natural environment. The proposed reduction in parking is expected to maintain a general net improvement relative to the impacts on the natural environment. As previously noted, the property is surrounded by several wetland resource areas for which special consideration relative to layout and drainage infrastructure are considered. The proposed site layout, including parking configuration, allows for a net reduction in impervious area, which aids in the decrease of the quantity and quality of runoff from the development. That, in combination with other stormwater improvements, provides an overall improvement to that existing condition. Specifically, now everything kind of flows off into this catch basin, into this pipe, and just goes direct with no treatment whatsoever. These are all going to be deep sump catch basins with hoods. From there, they'll go to a water quality unit, which will provide TSS removal prior to being discharged to the main system. Potential.
Just define TSS removal, just so everybody.
Total suspended solids within the stormwater. Okay. Overall, proposed project is, okay, potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. The overall proposed project is anticipated to have a positive fiscal impact upon the town. With a reduction in parking, the applicant is able to fully utilize the property to its maximum potential. This will inherently provide the town with additional employment opportunities as the business expands. The overall project is expected to increase the tax base of the town by providing additional tax revenues from the business and the structures themselves. As a reduction, the parking does not generate the need for other town services, such as fire or police presence beyond what the property currently requires, and does not contribute students to the school system. It's expected that the impact upon the town services to be minimal. So that's what we did for our submittal. Since that time, Jeff from Graves has done his review on the project. The comments have come back. I'll touch on a few things. One, there was one comment about which came up during the development meeting. We got feedback right away relative to the accessible parking. On this plan, we now show the accessible parking. We've updated the plans in our CAD system to address Jeff's comment. So when I printed this out tonight, we now have the accessible ramp system built in to the plans right here with 2 accessible parking spaces. Some of the other things that were asked about were the turning radius of the trucks, or the maneuvering of the trucks. That's in the package that's been submitted. A couple of other things were some directional arrows relative to the one-way status of the road, stop lines and stop signs at the entrance and exit point, or I guess at the exit points of the building for the vehicles, stuff like that. So overall, the review seems to be relatively innocuous. Most of the items have literally already been addressed on the updated plans, which we would then, our plan was to go to conservation, make sure that they didn't have any additional comments, concerns, and then come back to the March 7th meeting. If they were all set with everything, then we'd have the final plan set with all the adjustments from the letter that we submitted just now, made to the plans for a hopeful positive vote from the planning board.
Does anybody on the board have any questions for Bill?
No.
Anybody out in the public? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so I'm your abutter. I'm Kevin Lavin. I own New England Truck Design right next to you.
Okay, yeah.
I've been there 22 years, and so I'm here primarily because of, I'm just curious about stormwater runoff, Kenny. So through the years, I've seen that property pool up to the point where 6 to 8 inches of standing water in that building. And for weeks at a time, where Kyle Equipment would have to shut down the shop.
In the building?
In the building. And so then when Joe came to the property, and at that time I just had the backyard capped with regrind, you know, and I had the conservation people down and says, yeah, it's all set, it's good. So Joe, we got a lot of rain, and the yard filled up with water, as did the building. And so he came to me and he says, Kev, he goes, when you recap that property, you know, the water's shedding over this way. I said, no, Joe, it's always been like that. And so he built that berm around the back to direct the water away. And I don't know if that catch basin was there at the time, the ones that runs under the building, but if it was there, it wasn't doing anything. Because again, the water would be there for weeks at a time. So it looks like you're addressing all that stuff. And my concern, of course, is the water doesn't come my way. So,
Yeah, actually, everything's being sent to the east.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so that's all, because as you know, there's wetlands beyond it and everything.
Right over here.
Yeah, and even with Continental Stone, that was
Yeah.
all wetland, it's all been backfilled, so. Are you raising the grade of the property?
No.
We are actually in the back, we've elevated.
Oh, this
finished
part,
floor.
yeah.
In the
This-
back.
this area,
I agree
no.
with you 100%. In that heavy storm we had in June, water flowed through the building. Part of the issue was, prior to anything even being done with this, when the initial calculations were done on the pipe, in the catch basin, as you just stated, that pipe was drastically undersized without any imposition of new drainage. So out of the gate, that was one of the things that needed to be addressed, not to mention the fact that it was basically filled up, which has since been cleaned.
Yeah, because that water would stand there for weeks.
Absolutely, 100%. So again, what we've done here with the addition of the catch basins and the detention rain garden in the back, that should take care of the issues that were standing there. The owners of the building are perfectly aware of what happened in June, and that was a concern, and one of the reasons that we raised the elevation of the building in the back. And we now have positive flow out of the site should there become an issue. But it's all at this point, I think it's 9 inches.
103.
Yeah. Directed to those catch bases, which then treated, again, taking the TSS out, total suspended solids, and then put where it belongs instead of across the
Yeah,
street.
so the back building's about a foot higher than the front building.
Right. So that grade associated is for that purpose. So we did address that issue because we did some deep hole testing out there after the rain, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I've seen it for years,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, great, well, that satisfies my question, thank you.
Anything else? The only thing I can say, Bill, is I think the amount of reduction in parking that you're looking for might be asking too much. You're looking for a 25% reduction in parking according to our regs. I'm gonna ask you to take a look at that.
For one section here, we have to add one more because we had 12 spaces here, and now we put the parking back in, now we have 11.
Right, we had cross-hatch one for the adjacent handicaps, and then we have 11.
So now you wanna reduce it by 8 and not 9, is that it?
10.
Right.
10 instead of, because we had to remove a space in front.
One, okay.
Right. So now it's really 10 versus 9. Now, we do have the ability to do some parking, we could do some parallel parking along here in front of this building here. We could stripe it that. I personally wouldn't want to get into just doing more paving for the sake of having parking that's never going to be used.
And I think the other thing to really drive home, and I have to apologize, Andy Broomfield was planning on being here this evening, and he called me tonight, and he's ill, and he wanted me to extend his apologies to the board for not being able to attend the meeting. But when the initial count for people that he was putting in this building came to us with 10 people, and I said, well, what's your max? He says, I can't see us going beyond 15, so we used 20 as the number.
And part of that was because we could fit 29. And we think if we said 20, then that would be...
Very honest with you, we could jam this site up with additional parking spaces, but they're gonna be unused and they're gonna be needless. So I think that, with the understanding of...
We don't know that, though. I think our parking's pretty generous anyway, the 1 per 2,000 for a manufacturing.
And again, this is a request to the board, and we understand that, so for you, it's to spark this conversation, and I certainly appreciate that. We can look at some parallel parking, as Bill said, adjacent to the building. What we don't want to do is, clog up our travel patterns and just needlessly throw additional impervious area on here, which, puts us back into where we're trying to get away from. We want a pre-construction reduction.
Part of the way we're able to comply with the stormwater management regs is having a reduction in the impervious area that's on the property right now. So there's kind of a balance we're trying to strike with that. But between now and I did start taking a look at it tonight or this afternoon, because as I'm developing the truck patterns, there is enough room to put parking parallel along the building without interfering with the truck patterns. Quite frankly, Chris Anderson's much better at using that program than I am. So when he comes back, he comes back from his leave. We'll have him tweak it a little bit. It would be nice if we could get nose-in parking in that area with a maneuvering.
Can you go at an angle?
If you go to an angle, now we have to be able to turn around. That's so kind of a, we did talk about that. Here, we have the ability to go through, but we don't have the ability over there. So, one of the things that I hear what you're saying, and I want to give the board a way of saying, okay, what happens if someone comes in here after this company? What happens then? So, one of the things I want to look at is I want to look at a reserved parking area. So if we can show that we could park here in the future, and we could have this parking and comply, we could pull a special permit off with the board, but the board would have to grant us a waiver. And it might be that the special permit still goes through that way, but you're granting the special permit based upon the fact that we have the ability to show it, but we're not going to build it right now.
Being said, why not build it? Because then you'll be in compliance and you'll have plenty of parking, should the event come that you need the parking.
We'd have to be cognizant of the increase of the impervious area, because again, we want to make sure that we get a general reduction on this lot. So, I mean, it's a fine line, I guess, Bill, you'd have to take a look at.
Mr. Chairman, does the parking need to be paved?
No.
No.
It doesn't. You can do impervious.
Your reserved parking area is pervious.
Well, what if, so we have another product that we can utilize would be those grids.
Yeah.
And just have it be grass, but have it be grids, and that would.
Judge.
Correct. And then that gets us away from the impervious calculation. So let us take a look at that, you know. Will you give us a little bit? I mean, if we get down to like 5, is that better?
In the interim, 5's better or not, take a look at it and see what you can come up with.
Right.
Okay.
And I would recommend that you get it as low as possible.
Okay.
That's fair.
Yeah, thank you for that. And again, the intent, as we understand it, is to spark this conversation. We appreciate that you've had that. We'll work our way down and try to get it as low as possible without creating congestion on the site and impacting our turning radiuses for the trucks and stuff.
Okay.
Maybe we'll even turn some more of it into impervious.
We'd like to tax your building.
Just a
I mean,
clarification. For the town of Sterling, impervious is pavement only, correct?
Yeah,
Gravel, everything else is considered pervious area.
that's right.
Regrind too.
Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of saying it's going to be regrind or gravel and then having someone come along after I'm all done and paving it. So I think I have experience with other projects we've worked on where we've done the grids. We've done the grids for fire lanes, and it's all grass, and there were residential ones, and it works phenomenal. We have it in different locations where it's actually the parking for the facility itself is on these grids with grass. So they're very durable. The one that I mean, we have a house in Maine that we only have 6 months there, so we park in the grass, but the grass has the grids in it, and there's never been a problem. So there's definitely a product out there, and I think having the flexibility of doing that, I think we could at least show the parking and try to get to that number that we need to have on the property, which would make all of our lives a little bit easier. My only question is whether doing parking in a different manner, such as on grass, would still require the special permit or not. And I'd have to take a look at the regulations to see whether the definition of the parking area is a solid surface with painted lines and all this other stuff. So we'd have to kind of just touch that a little bit.
Well, you would if you're not showing parking that can actually be parked on.
Right, but if we put the grids on, they can be parked on. Correct. Yep, okay.
Everybody good? So, make a motion, we continue to,
Yeah, we'll have to do it to date and time.
March
certain-
7th?
Certain, because it's a special.
You got anything,
permit.
Steve?
So you're gonna take a look at adding parking, so that's a revision to the plan.
Yes.
It's kind of cutting it close for turning the plan over to Jeff, having him review it in time for the 7th. We meet again on the 28th. Maybe it would make more sense to give you the time to work out your
I
parking.
can have a sketch over to Jeff tomorrow.
What's that?
I can have a sketch over to Jeff tomorrow, and to you tomorrow, to look at the parking. That's simple.
It's not going to change structures, it's just
Yeah.
simply the addition of parking on the existing impervious area, so.
Yeah.
Hold on one second. Did we actually pick the second March meeting date? Did we actually pick that yet?
No, but that's our usual meeting date.
Follow suit from last month, we could go the 21st. So, either one. I didn't know we picked the date yet.
Could we pick the 7th, and then if we don't have enough time, we can push to the 21st?
We usually do the fourth Thursday.
1, 2, 3, 4. So, the 28th.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it would be, if Jeff's going to have the time to be able to,
There's not a lot,
He's
there's
gonna
not a lot of heavy lifting on this one either, so.
we'll try that. We'll go to the 7th. If for some reason it's not ready, then we're gonna have to move it to the 28th.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
That's fair.
Yep.
That sound good?
Yep.
Sound good, Jeff?
Yes, sounds good.
Thank you.
Motion to continue to March 7th.
This the building. Sean, you're up. Thank
All in
you.
favor?
Thanks for the time.
Aye. Opposed, none? See you on the 7th.
I'd like to thank the board for their time tonight.
Don't rush tomorrow, but if I could have it.
I had this. Sorry, I had it.
It's gonna be
Yes, absolutely. Of course. Here we go. Okay. All right. Meeting back in session. Copy the agenda. Let's see it for a second. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is planning board public hearing on the proposed zoning amendments, adding various types of kennels to the protective bylaw use regulations. So I'll read the legal notice that was advertised. So I'll read the right one. Okay. Proposed zoning amendments pursuant to MGL Chapter 48, Section 5. Notice is hereby given to the planning board. Will hold a public hearing on Thursday, February 22nd, 2024 at 6:30 PM in room 205, Butterick Municipal Building, 1 Park Street, on an amendment to the Town of Sterling's protective bylaw, adding the various types of kennels found in the definitions of terms, Section 301-5.4, to the protective bylaws use regulation, Section 301-2.3. Full text of the proposed zoning amendments can be reviewed at the town clerk's office and the planning department office during regular town hall office hours from the Sterling Planning Board. So I'll welcome a motion to open up the public hearing for the kennels. Have a second? All in favor? Aye. Public hearing is now open. So, looking at this, back at the town meeting in 2022. In 2022, some changes were made to the kennel bylaw. The definitions were approved, but the table of use never made it in. So that's what this is about, where we have the table of uses here that says what's approved in certain zoning and what isn't. And the one that we have here, that was the one that was the bone of contention, is the personal kennel. So the proposed language for this is a pack or collection of more than 4 dogs and not more than 6 dogs, 3 months or older, owned or kept under single ownership for private personal use, provided, however, that breeding of personal-owned dogs may take place for the purpose of improving, exhibiting, or showing the breed for the use of legal sporting activities or for other personal reasons, provided further that selling, trading, bartering, or distributing such breeding from a personal kennel shall be to the other breeders or individuals by private sale only and not to wholesalers, brokers, or pet shops, provided Further, that a personal kennel shall not sell, trade, barter, or distribute a dog not bred from its personally owned dog, and provided further that dogs temporarily housed at a personal kennel in conjunction with an animal shelter or rescue registered with the department may be sold, traded, bartered, or distributed if the transfer is not for profit. Personal kennels are subject to the setbacks in the zoning districts for which they are located. I think some of that language is state, correct? Okay. So I'll go through the different kennels and where they're allowed and where they're not. So animal clinic, animal businesses, or veterinary hospitals would be a special permit in rural residential, would not be allowed in neighborhood residential. Yes in commercial, special permit in town center, and a yes in light industrial. Personal kennel, approved animal facility, domestic charitable organization would be a special permit in rural residential, would be a no in neighborhood residential, would be a special permit in commercial, a no in town center, and a special permit in light industrial. Commercial boarding, veterinary kennel, would be a special permit in rural residential, would be a no in neighborhood residential, would be a yes in commercial, would be a no in town center, and a yes in light industrial. Pet shop would be a no in rural residential, a no in neighborhood residential, special permit in commercial, special permit in town center, and a no in light industrial. And then a research institute would be a no in rural residential, no in neighborhood residential, no in commercial, no in town center, and a special permit in light industrial. And just so everybody knows, rural residential is 2-acre zoning, neighborhood residential is half-acre zoning. Rural residential can be 1 acre under the old zoning. So that's what this particular table of uses says. This is the definitions that are being put forth, and this is the definition of the personal kennel. So, does anybody have any questions on that?
To change again, in terms of the number of dogs, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, could you give us that name, please?
Yeah, I didn't hear all that.
Oh, okay. So what is it that you want to
Oh,
hear?
my name's Pam Donaldson, Hayward Road.
Yeah.
Yes, I couldn't catch the count of the number of dogs. You say the personal kennel, that's going to be the change.
Okay, so a pack or collection of more than 4 dogs and not more than 6 dogs.
So you're changing what a kennel is now instead of this in Sterling. You can have 10 plus. Yeah, 10 plus, yes. So
This is a personal
limiting that
kennel.
to 6.
This is a personal kennel.
Yeah, this is for 40 years on 10 plus.
This is a personal kennel.
Same one, personal kennel, 40
Mhm.
years. Correct. We've been all paying.
And we can't transfer a license on our property that we've paid for 35 years. And I have a kennel building built on the property, and I can't transfer that license. This is gonna stop it?
No, it'd be, yours are all grandfathered.
No, I have a personal one at home.
Yeah, but it would be
separate.
grandfathered because you already,
But not if you sell the property.
No.
No. No permits go when you sell the property. Special permits, they have to be renewed by the new property owner.
Where did the 6 come from?
Excuse me?
Who wrote those new bylaws?
We did.
So. the
We're
state-
proposing this. We're not changing this here tonight. We're proposing, this is going to town meeting to be voted on.
Okay, the state says 10 plus.
This is what we're proposing at town meeting.
Okay, can we postpone this hearing because the animal control board president had to leave? Plus, animal control was not notified. Plus, animal control wasn't even notified that you were having this meeting. We've been meeting and volunteering our time for 30 years, and we weren't given the courtesy that we had to find out through somebody else that notified us. We're just very, after donating all of our time and every rabies clinic we work.
Steve, was this
And nobody
advertised?
notified
Mr. Chairman,
us.
I personally notified the animal control officer, and she said she would let the animal control committee know about this hearing, and it was duly advertised in town hall, on our website, and in the newspaper.
What newspaper?
The Clinton item.
Well, it doesn't come anymore.
And where's Meeting House Hill News? We used to get that too.
Right.
That's what we're required to do.
So I have a question, Cassandra, Clinton Road, Cassandra Creer, Clinton Road. So what caused?
I can kick your
I
stick,
can
thank
stand
you.
up in front of
I can't see you, I just see your eyes.
You can hear me quite clearly, though I have quite a big voice. What changed the idea from 10, more than 10 or plus, to 6? Because this is the only town I've ever heard of that. Because I used to live in Hudson, which is a very big little town, but it's turning into like a mini city, mini Boston. And they allow 10 plus dogs. So anybody that considered a personal kennel had to have 5 or more. It would have to get a license for 5 or more. And then after about 7 dogs, you had to get a license for 7 plus. And they allowed that. And also in the town of Hudson, they would have people pay a certain amount. So I think it was like, for 5 or more, for at least up to 7, you would pay, I think it was $112 yearly, and the kennel license. And then after 7 or after 10, it would be like $150 yearly. From this town, for the application itself, they require you to pay $420 upfront to apply for the application to get a kennel license. Within the past 5 years, how many kennels have the ZBA actually approved? That's my question. And when this goes forward, who's going to be approving the kennel licensing? Is it just going to be the ZBA, the 4 people that approve, and exactly how many have they been approving?
If it's a special permit, it's the ZBA.
Correct, but how many have they been approving within the past 5 years? Because from my recollection, they really haven't been approving much at all, including myself, I myself have almost 9 acres of land. And they didn't approve me back 5 years ago when I applied for a kennel license. That I've had for over 8 years in Hudson, which is a city, and I lived in an apartment, I still had a license. Where now I have 9 acres of land and they won't let me have more than 5 dogs, but I can have my pig in the front yard, which is quite a question there. When you're changing the zoning from the typical zoning for kennel licensing the way it is now, to now everything in the zoning in town, it does cause a little bit of issue, especially for people who decide to either choose Sterling to live or those who are actually living here. And, a lot of people are not gonna be doing things the right way because they know they're not gonna get approved, especially fronting $420 to then be denied and then not, I don't know where that money goes to, but we lose out on the money, we don't get that back if it gets denied. But, what ends up happening? Do they end up not applying for it and doing what they want to do? This is going to cause just a whole bunch of more questions and issues, all because the fact that you're just decreasing everything that all the other towns actually have for people that do have kennel licensing.
You're talking like we're making a decision on this tonight. We are not. We're simply having a public hearing as to what we're proposing at the next town meeting. Everything you're saying here tonight, you can say at town meeting because that's where it's going to count. At town meeting is where everybody's going to vote on this proposal. All this board's doing is putting a proposal together based on the feedback that we get from the residents. Obviously not the ones that have dogs, but from what we're getting from the majority of the residents as to what they want. So as the board, we're putting this together, we're proposing it at town meeting. So at town meeting, you folks will be able to get up and you'll be able to say your piece as to why you think it should be more or less or whatever it is, and then the town will vote. We don't vote, the town will vote. The residents will decide whether that moves forward or not.
Yeah, but it kind of sounds like you're just setting it in stone already, so it's like setting us all up for failure from here on out. That's the problem.
I'm setting you up for failure?
Yeah, it's basically, for anyone that has dogs, you're setting them up for failure because it's going to be set, and then sometimes people go and they're like, yeah, sure, yeah, I'll go for this, because they just want to move on, especially if they're there for hours, so.
You're making an assumption. We're not setting anybody up for failure. We're simply putting forward a table of uses which isn't in the bylaw at all right now. So if you go for a kennel right now, you don't even have a table of uses there. So that's what we're doing. We're putting a table of uses and we're defining what you can do with a personal kennel.
6 dogs is
But you might as
nothing.
well just change the bylaw to let us register 6 dogs. Why are you calling it a kennel license? It doesn't make sense. To go from 4, you have to have a kennel license to have 6, and that's all you can have?
Really?
If you're breeding dogs that do anything,
have more
it's
than
not
6.
enough.
If you're breeding dogs correctly, that's
Right.
not enough,
You're
because it
breeding
takes a
dogs
dog
correctly.
at least 2 years before they're even able to be bred, passing their health clearances. So even if you have 6 dogs on the property and you just get those 6 dogs, you're still gonna wait 2 years before you can even breed any of those. So it's, it's, with kennels, I know that you basically, you have your older ones, and then those move out and younger ones come in. But if you have that limitation of just 6 dogs, you're never gonna have any litters, at least within that time frame. You're not.
I have a question.
Thank you for
And
that.
this is news to me. I don't even have the item for a carrier.
They stopped coming.
When this board was on, when
I see.
the old board, or whatever, a board, was on, they used to do a lot of advertising in the Worcester Telegram.
And we stopped doing that because it was too expensive and they kept screwing up. So we went with the Clinton item.
The Clinton item was owned by the Worcester Telegram.
No, it's not. I'm dealing with an outfit. We pay the bills to an outfit out of Dallas.
Then the Worcester Telegram is also Dallas-based, because they're owned by the same company, and I know that the item is owned.
Okay,
The
well,
item is not owned by the
Worcester is about 4 times expensive as the Clinton item, and
But if the general public doesn't get a subscription to the item, then they're not advised, publicly or not, they're not advised what they should be doing.
The one comment I'd make, I think that would hold weight 10 or even 15 years ago when the vast majority of people subscribed to a paper. I think now,
I have a
agreed,
digital,
but I think there's
telegram.
much fewer people now that subscribe, digital or otherwise, to a newspaper as compared to the other postings. I understand the purpose of saving money, maybe it's more targeted, maybe there's a number that says a certain number of people subscribe in town. But regardless,
You can't post it on the town site? In other words, it said to come to the town hall and see it posted?
Hold on, just let him finish, and then I'll let you go, okay?
But regardless of how it's posted, it did meet legal requirements. I don't think anyone's saying that this is an end round if we're
No,
putting...
I'm asking more of a question than I am.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's simply a cost issue.
I also had multiple problems with Worcester Telegram.
Logistics.
Yeah.
Steve, this isn't a diatribe against you, I'm more...
If you want, I'll use whoever you want. I'm just telling you that I had multiple issues with Worcester Telegram, and they turned out to be 4 times as expensive as the item. I haven't had a problem with the item, so that's, you guys tell me who you want me to use for the newspaper. I don't particularly care.
Just has to be more general
It's a
circulation.
separate issue.
I think it's fine for now, we can talk about that later. Go ahead, sir.
I mean, how many kennel licenses you have in town? I don't know the exact number. But why wouldn't they send a notice to each of the people that have existing licenses to make them aware of what that change is?
The dog officer knows. They're at my house every year.
The way we advertise it is how we're required to advertise it by law.
Just hang it up.
It's also on the town website, and it's also posted here at the town hall as well.
Just a courtesy.
Go ahead, state your name, please.
Lori, I live in town. I have a kennel license. Are these proposals being made because there's been complaints about the people, the kennel license holders? Has there been complaints?
We have heard complaints.
The board hasn't, have they?
We have heard complaints.
So didn't the Animal Control Board propose their version of a table of uses in 2022?
CPA had one too that limited it to strictly 4 dogs. So we came with a compromise in between of eliminating any choice to at least an option. And right now, you have no options because there's no definition that's attached to the table of uses. So there's no kennels allowed in town right now. So it has to be fixed.
Well, maybe they'd have to refund all of our kennel fees they've collected for 30 years.
You already have kennels, so that's...
Well, what does that mean? Why would you say?
You're grandfathered, so that's not the issue. Anybody new in the town, the bylaws don't work. There's no definition or use that work together because it was eliminated at that town meeting. So we have in the table of use a commercial kennel, and in the definitions, we have all the definitions that the animal control had proposed.
If it's not in the table of uses, it's my understanding that it's not allowed.
That's correct.
So let me ask you a question, as someone who's a taxpayer. Why is the person, when we're not allowed to have it, why are they paying kennel
No,
license?
this is 22 and after, correct? Because there was a change in the bylaw. If all these people are
Right now,
here,
there's no kennels at all
shouldn't
of
be
any
approved.
description.
They shouldn't
The
be
town of
approved.
Sterling is getting money, revenue from,
It's for the new people that would have applied. The people that already have them are already grandfathered. They have
Existing
Go ahead.
are
Go ahead,
not
Judy.
affected.
Judy Reynolds, Stephanie Ann Lane. What was voted down in 2022 was the expectation of specifics of producing everybody going through the ZBA for permission to do anything. And that was voted down. The original definitions that were in there were to be opened and evaluated, and the Animal Control Board brought forth something last year, and it wasn't carried forward, and they should probably have followed through and done it themselves, because they are the people that understand how this all works. You guys aren't breeders, you aren't dog owners, you aren't people who take your dogs to rallies and to hunting trials. So you haven't got any experience in what it means to try and create a legacy kennel who has passionate people who want to provide the world with great animals. And they are very cautious about how they do that. The kennels in this, there are no complaints about kennels. You may get dog complaints, and nobody's going to stop that from happening because individual dog owners don't particularly care. Kennel owners care passionately because they don't want anybody to come after them and make them an example. So your kennel owners in this town are very, very careful people. And they've been here for 30 and 40 years. And so I really think that we need to take another look at this and come up with something that makes some really good sense, that gives everybody a confidence that there's going to be oversight with animals. And the Animal Control Board has been an incredible organization for this community. And we need to thank them for all the hard work that they do, because they are the ones that have tried to make this a town where it's welcoming to animals, but nobody's suffering from barking dogs all the time. I have people in my neighborhood, they have barking dogs, but they're individual people, they're not kennels. Makes a difference, really, really makes a difference. So I know you guys have come forward, and I understand you've probably made a really strong effort in what you know and understand, but it is out of whack with actually state law, which allows the by right kennels in 2 acres or more, because it's an agriculturally based operation. And so what you're saying is we're going to go up against state law in order to, I guess, hear from a couple people who've said they don't like dogs to you.
Anybody that wants to apply for a kennel license in Sterling, that has 6 or more dogs, I would think they would be very responsible people, like you said. More people that have a kennel have skills to take care of many animals, where some people can't take care of one. A person with a kennel of 6 or more dogs, you would probably find to be more responsible dog owners than someone that opens their kitchen door every morning, lets their dog out for the day and wonders where they are at night. Or what they're doing in someone else's yard, or what they're backing. Find very responsible, animal-loving people that love these living, breathing creatures and will do whatever they legally need to do to protect them and to protect their legacy, like you said. I think anybody with 6 or more dogs with a kennel, you're going to find is a very responsible dog owner.
I have a question. The John Q. Public, by the way. Taxpayer. So if this town meeting, if a person goes to a dog place to get cleaned, to have the dog, is that considered a kennel license? And how many dogs are they allowed? Are you telling me that they're only allowed 6? This new bylaw?
It's commercial council.
That's commercial, so that's different than
Personal.
personal.
But a grooming shop doesn't have to get a kennel license.
That's what I was just gonna, that was my next question.
Kennel license. We have
Oh,
many
they go
grooming
good.
shops in town, they don't have kennel
They
license.
do the day boarding stuff.
Day board needs to get a kennel license, that's different, but just a plain grooming shop by itself, they don't have a kennel license.
It's a
The
commercial
dogs-
endeavor, dogs
Right.
don't stay there.
They don't stay
They come in
there.
for the day, they have a bath, they go home.
Yeah, they
It's
go.
not like anybody is keeping them anywhere. This is totally different. This is people who raise dogs and train them and show them and do hunting with them and do rally with them. Totally different.
Has this board read the kennel renewal form that the town uses?
I have, and I have a dog, by the way, that goes over and gets bathed, and he's gone to exercising classes and everything at, pardon my expression, at Champion Kennels. And I find this whole ordeal of people not being notified, just, it gives me a wrong impression of what we're trying to do here. That's my own opinion.
I think I'll stand up again. I think the definition of what people think is a breeder and a backyard breeder is kind of intertwining for people who don't understand. Us breeders personally put a lot of money into our dogs.
I do know.
For genetic testing, for health testing, hearts and hip certification. Just a hip certification on one dog is $500 per dog. Genetic, $200 per dog. Heart certification, it's about $150 around there, depending on what you're doing. We put a lot in our dogs, and I know for a fact, a breeder, we breed out that craziness so that we give people calmer dogs.
Yeah.
My puppies, from the moment they start to bark, they already know what quiet means. Because you think, I want to hear a dog barking all day long, because I don't. And I've been breeding for over 14 years now. I don't. I have Yorkies and I have Boxers. My dogs know what quiet means. They know if someone's there, I allow them, good boy or good girl, thank you. And then they continue to bark, okay, quiet. They sit and they be quiet because they alerted me to what they're supposed to do, because dogs bark to alert their owners that something's going on. But then they also know to be quiet. I have been breeding for over 14 years for Yorkshire Terriers. I'm the top breeder in Massachusetts for Yorkshire Terriers, and not one of my puppy owners have ever complained about my dogs. And I talk to every single one of those people. They're my family. They're part of my family. And all of my puppies are trained from the moment they start barking to be quiet. And then I want to say about 90% or if not more of my puppies are all basically their owners, either emotional support dogs, service dogs, because that's what people need. If we limit what breeders can actually do, you're basically limiting all the good breeders, and all these backyard breeders are just going to move right in because they can do what they want. And everyone's shouting. Do you know how many dogs, the people that come to me and say, oh, I just lost my dog from ARVC or DM? I'm like, yeah, that's poorly bred dogs because they're not testing these dogs. Us breeders, I'm pretty sure we all test all our dogs, because you know what breeder is going to be good enough if you don't test your dogs. The first thing people ask, do you test your dogs? Do you do health testing? Can I see proof of that health testing? Yes, you can. a good breeder will say, yes, you can, and we will show it to them, because that's what we put into all our lines, that's what we do. We don't want people complaining. Like I said, my dogs are in Hudson, I have a little tiny apartment I lived in. I was at the top floor. Not one tenant in those apartments ever complained about my dogs barking, because my dogs knew quiet. And that was it. The silence in this room, I could have as many as, I don't know, 10, 15 dogs, and they could be quiet because I commanded them to be quiet. You know, us breeders, we train our dogs for this purpose. It's not like you're gonna come into the town, get a whole bunch of dogs, and then the dog's gonna be barking 24/7. Nobody wants to hear that. Neighbors don't wanna hear that. Even the people that take care of the dogs don't wanna hear that, you know? It's just a misassumption that people assume, oh, this many dogs, people can hear barking.
I think the general public might think that someone in town getting a kennel license is going to be a puppy mill. I think
I just want to add one.
that's what the,
I'll go
the
one
bottom
more, go
line.
ahead.
I just want to say one more thing too. When you're talking about limiting it to 6, with the dogs that I have right now, 5 of my dogs are elderly, spayed, neutered, retired. They are not showing anymore. I'm not going to dump them into somebody else's home. So the dogs that I have that I'm breeding with, yes, they are. I have a few more on top of that. But if I'm confined to 6, what am I supposed to do with my old dogs my heart dogs that have lived with me forever?
That is a consideration.
Yeah, a lot of us keep our dogs with us.
Mr. Chairman, I know you're trying to stop comment, and you want to go home. This has been a long night for everybody.
I'll let you go one more, and then that's it. We gotta wrap this up. So go ahead. I haven't heard from you yet, so go ahead.
Thank you. Deborah Sadrowski, I'm on 153 Kendall Hill Road. I have 2 questions of clarity. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion. We don't care very much about what we're sitting here talking about. For clarity, and Patty said this, so those of us who have current kennel license are unaffected by the change. I'm not asking that selfishly. I mean, I guess that takes some of the emotion out of it, so we are who we are. But so new applicants obviously would be bound by this. Is it a question of clarity, as we're all kind of voicing opinions? Is anything that we say going to change your proposal, or your proposal is locked in, it's going to town meeting, you're just kind of listening to engage opinions?
Goes to the select board.
Okay. Oh, we refer to them to put a place on the warrant.
We refer to them to place.
It's on the warrant. It doesn't mean it's etched in stone. It's a proposal. It's a proposal.
Thank you.
All it is. We don't make any decision on it.
Like I said.
You will be voting to refer this to the select board for placement on the warrant.
Correct.
Right, okay.
And will the select board listen to comments from
Nothing.
residents?
Go to town meeting. So,
That's a town meeting.
and my only thought is, maybe it sums up, it's more of perhaps a comment, since this is a public hearing, less a request, but I feel, and I think most of us feel like the decisions that are imposed and made at this level, I wish for something more holistic or collaborative, because I feel like it's about the folks who end up, I think, giving input, and you said a whole lot of folks have spoken to you and shared their input. They're not the folks who are operating, a hobby kennel. So I think they have assumptions, and that's been said by a couple people about what that's like. I don't feel any more qualified if someone said how many cattle should Favor have. I don't know. I'm unqualified to say, make judgment on that. It's probably too late to wish for a little more collaboration so that people could understand. I think it's about 13 kennels in town. I've talked to the town clerk, and we aren't the problem. And as long as the same level of scrutiny continued to be applied, those folks would not be the problem. So but I feel like there's misinformed folks who land this stuff on your desk, and then you're pushing it forward. So if we can't change it, I suppose we are where we are. But I just want that said, that I think we all wish for something more collaborative, and the ACAB was in place with the intention to do that, and so.
I have one question. Just because this board votes a yea or a nay, it goes to the selectmen, and then it goes to town meeting, does not mean that it's approved.
That's right. Everything you've said here tonight,
Just so you
I
know
would
that.
encourage you all to go to
So
town
everybody
meeting.
knows that.
Of course.
Is there a way for us to make our own, so that way they could see is there a way to make our own, or get a comparison, so that we could come to a mutual agreement of it? Because it's it seems like it's half and half right now.
You can petition to have something posted at the town meeting. You have to have a certain number of signatures. There's paperwork that accompanies it.
Yeah, we know that, because we got a lot of signatures signatures 2 years ago. I went walking for that one.
That would be the process for it.
So the warrant for town meeting closes on the 15th. As this is zoning, it would, whatever you folks submitted as a citizen petition would have to come back to us for a public hearing. We need 3 weeks' notice to advertise it in the paper. Again, so we're probably too late for this meeting. So I'll ask the board, what's your pleasure? Do you want to refer this to the select board for consideration at town meeting, or do you want to shelve it, or do you want to revise it?
It's been shelved for too long. We need a table of uses, so.
And you didn't meet with the
Well, we didn't meet with the Animal Control Board to help you revise it. The people that are doing the work.
This is what we have.
I think
At town meeting, propose an amendment if you'd like.
No, we did that once before. We worked 24/7. It's not fair.
It's been a long time that the
It
bylaw's
has,
been
and the
incomplete.
Animal Control Board would love to help you revise it.
And this is what
And
we
get
have.
something that we all love. We want to make sure that preservation breeders, when we are gone, because we're all at the top end of it, are still allowed to come into Sterling and not just doodles everywhere you go.
They will be allowed.
Unfortunately, the new ones, like myself, have not been.
Right.
Okay, folks, we've heard, I appreciate all your comments, and I want to thank you all for being respectful. It's a good conversation. So, that being said, what I do, I'll take a motion that we refer this to the select board for town meeting. Do I have a second?
Once it goes there, you can't change it.
Motion on the floor to refer to the select board. To go on town meeting. Do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Thank you.
It's not a good thing, you can't get anything.
We will redo it.
The problem now becomes there's no law.
But that's,
So here's the thing, just so everybody understands, this could have been amended at a town meeting. Now nothing will move forward.
That's okay, we will revise
We'll
it.
fix
so
it.
Animal
Agreed.
Control
Enough
will
of
fix
us.
it.
Agreed, I'm just trying to explain this, just make sure.
I just want to make 2 points before you
A
leave.
year.
When I got here a year ago, we had a meeting with the animal control officer.
Officer, not board.
I think there needs to be communication.
Who else was part of
between
that?
those two.
Patty, were you part of that meeting, or Carl?
I might have been Kirsten.
Right, it was Kirsten Newman, who is now a select board member. So we took a stab at it and, in an attempt to bring it to last year's town meeting, but we couldn't come to agreement. This proposal, I emailed it to your animal control officer 2 months ago, and she said she would pass it on to the full committee. So whether she did that or not, I don't know.
I think the reason it didn't come to an agreement was because the rural residential wasn't supposed to be included in that, which you guys now are trying to include into the bylaw, which it wasn't originally in there, because it's rural residential.
With the table of use, it has to include every single.
Yeah, because I think that's what it was. It wasn't an agreement, because they agreed that the industrial and the commercial could be added to it, but they didn't want the rural residential, and that was trying to be pushed so they could get the rural residential in there.
Well, seeing this won't be going to a town meeting, if you folks want to get together and try again.
That'd be great, thank you.
Definitely will. Appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you for
All right.
listening. I appreciate it, thank you all for listening, have a great night. Great rest of your night.
All right, so,
I get to see you in this town meeting.
let's just,
Get this thing home?
Push this thing
No zoning amendments.
on release.
you want to take care of it now?
It's gonna take 5 minutes. We've already gone over it multiple times. We've clarified it to the point of.
If you're good with it, we can put this as a public hearing at our next meeting.
I got one thing.
I'm good. Unless there's any more changes. I'm good. No
So,
more changes.
I'm good with the edits that you made on this, Steve. I think the only thing is, it was the intention to on 401.132, that we have a 10% margin of error, we're striking that, and we should be striking C, an appropriate rate of inflation over a 5-year period, because we have a 30% addition to the bond flat. And that was the whole idea, to simplify. The highest I've ever seen any town, and all the ones I've looked at, was 15, so we're getting pretty much double what I've seen across the board.
time it changes.
And it's arbitrary. You know, it's arbitrary, so this is definite, it's written, it's clear.
Anyone could crunch that number 30%, that's.
Did a great job.
So I'm gonna post this for our late March hearing night. And I'll post this online, so. All right, so that's good.
So the 28th.
20th, correct?
Show of hands, who's gonna make the 7th meeting, March 7th? You can't?
I may probable because my wife's birthday has been postponed for the week. I have permission to.
I'm trying right now.
What's that?
I'm trying right now.
Okay. If you can't, let me know.
I will, like I always have. Yep.
Minutes.
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 I've read minutes through, and the minutes are good.
Minutes are good. I read them.
I wasn't here, so I'll abstain.
Motion to approve the minutes of January 25th.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? None?
So gang, you tell me who you want me to use for advertising public hearings.
I defer to your experience. If you're having a negative experience with the TNG, and I have them to
I've
obituary.
had so many fights with them about, did it get published? Oh, I can't tell, well, we can't publish it because you didn't pay us.
No, I agree with you, and from what I hear, it's not too far off. It's gonna shut
You're
down.
gonna charge me 4 times
You're
what
not
the
gonna see
Clinton
a
item,
telegram.
and you're gonna hassle me.
I get
To
it for
vote.
digital,
Yeah.
so
Systems
I
antiquated
really
anyway,
don't
that
get
we
it.
have to do.
Yeah,
it.
that's
Let me ask you a crazy question. What about Meeting House News?
They only publish once a month.
Okay, all right.
Couldn't get the timing right, because you gotta publish
And
twice.
The item is on Mondays, on Fridays, rather.
Yeah, and
I get it.
realistically to me, I think the vast majority of people that have any interest in the town are either checking the town website or on Facebook in some town group. And I know at least the groups I'm involved in, every single thing that gets posted here, typically there's like 3 or 4
Ends up
people
on the street.
that immediately post them on Facebook. Hey,
Yeah.
I see blasting on Onyx every single time they have blasting because there's a couple people that go, hey, this is happening. I think that's a much better vehicle than what we have to do by law.
Okay, the town administrator is actually putting together a town Facebook page.
Oh, good.
Even better.
He put it up
Thought we had
and
one.
Facebook took it down.
Oh,
And now he has to go through an appeal process. I don't know why.
Who knows?
Pardon my expression.
that's awesome.
All
So
right.
you know what, you
Town
find
just
out
picked
a
up
lot on
Facebook.
Facebook. And I'm not a person of Facebook.
So
But
before
my
we
wife
get too
is,
deep
so
in the weeds,
You know, I read it, I read it.
motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Thanks for playing.